and he's going to be followed by Dr. Wenda Botchpiece. She's a program manager in the Office of International Science and Engineering within the National Science Foundation. We are also very privileged to have Ms. Kate Van Embrick, an Assistant Director, Fulbright Scholar Program, Institutes of International Education. We have also Ms. Amira Nelson. She's the Senior Outreach Officer. We have Mr. Peter Kerrigan, who's the Deputy Director for North America within the DAD. We have Ms. Gudram Chazote, who's the Head of Selections Program for Sub-Saharan Africa within DAD. We have Mr. Sam Oti, Senior Program Specialist, Global Health Programs Division within the International Development Research Center, IDRC. We have Dr. Sylvia Mkandariwe. She's the Senior Program Manager, World Bank Centers of Excellence, and she's also affiliated with the Association of African Universities, AAAU. Mr. Daniel Planch is also joining us. He's a program manager, US Africa Frontiers Program, and he works for the National Academies of Science. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as we welcome our esteemed panel.
Right. So good morning. I guess I'm first here. I am going to, is it possible, Esther, for me to share my screen here for my slide deck? Because yes. I actually updated the slide deck from this because I wanted to reflect the comments from yesterday. So I have a more recent slide deck if I'm allowed to share that.
Okay. Randy.
Go ahead. You should be able to share your screen to see the option.
I just have to make sure I'm sharing the right thing. All right, beautiful. Good morning, one and all, or good afternoon, or good evening, or good middle of the night, depending on when you're where you're calling in from. It's a pleasure to be here today. So my name is Jim Suits. I am a senior advisor for program operations in the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Foreign Agricultural Service. So I wanted to begin, as I often do, with a bit of one of my favorite philosophical quotes. So some of you have probably seen this before. They say there are only 9 meals between mankind and anarchy. And that quote is over 100 years old, but it's still very much true. And one of the things that we've seen in many places is food insecurity does not end well. People can tolerate a lot of things, but people generally can't tolerate not being able to eat. So in that vein, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has a global presence. This map is slightly out of date, but apparently not out of date enough to convince our Public Affairs Office to make a new map. Read into that what you will. But it's, only a couple of years old. So, but we have research labs active in 6 countries. We have food safety offices in 29. We have trade and development offices in 72. And many other countries are covered, sort of multi-country offices, as it were. I tried one time to actually count our presence in terms of projects, programs, and other on-the-ground activities. And I gave up after getting above 100. We have activities in most countries around the world in one form or another. And I emphasize, that when we say the Department of Agriculture, I talk about food security. That to me is the thing that is most near and dear to my heart. But agriculture includes other things also. It can include, cotton, for example, which I know is a major crop, cash crop in a large chunk of the area for some of the people who are calling in today. It can include livestock feed, genetics, research, forest products. All these things are agricultural products. So USDA's fundamental goal to improving food security is to ensure that agriculture can move. One of the biggest challenges to food security is that the places where food is grown and the places where food is eaten are often not the same places, whether that's true within a country or in multiple countries. So our goal, our policy is to try to improve the ability of food to move, to reduce undue barriers to reduce delays, to reduce, unnecessary checkpoints that serve no purpose other than to increase costs and increase spoilage. We do this through our work directly, in some cases, with foreign governments and international organizations, but also through supporting some of the research tracks that many of you are working on. For example, when we're trying to work with international organizations to establish international standards, we don't just want to make them up. We'd like to actually have some science behind those standards to know whether or not a particular standard is in fact safe for people and for animals and for the environment. We do this through a lot of technical assistance. So we have, that can take a wide range. We don't have a one-size-fits-all approach. The approach we take will differ depending on where, we try to meet different contexts where they're at. In some cases, that can include donations of U.S. agricultural commodities, provision of technical assistance, workshops, capacity building, improving. In some cases, we have a program, for example, that does teaching and pedagogy within universities, sanitary, phytosanitary barriers, and a lot of analysis of agricultural trade issues. I will note, most of you, of course, are very familiar with the principle of exchanges. We do have a scientific exchange portfolio. This principally focuses on nationals from non-high income countries. So these are short-term exchanges on collaborative research, exposure for faculty at U.S. universities. In some cases, we can facilitate, I shouldn't say arrange, but we can facilitate for faculty to take sabbatic leaves at USDA research labs, both in the United States and internationally. As most of you are scientists and researchers, you know that the best science and the best research happens when people are talking, not when you keep things isolated in silos. One example of some of the work that we're currently working on relates to African swine fever. Don't let the name fool you. This is a global issue, not limited to one particular area. African swine fever, for those of you who are not animal health specialists, is quite harmless to humans and very fatal to pigs. If you have a pig and it catches ASF, there's about I think the number is something like 99.8% chance that the pig is going to die from it. Not only that, the virus itself is very resilient. It will stay in the soil and in the roughage for at least 5 years and possibly more. We just don't have more data yet. There are current outbreaks in a number of places around the world. And, the estimated impact of ASF is in the tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars in lost efficiency every year. Nothing to sneeze at, pun intended. We also, as mentioned, do a lot of information and analysis. We work with international groups to produce and publish market information. We like to provide objective data on foreign market conditions. There is famously an anecdote that we like to think back to. So many years ago, we still have an office in Buenos Aires, Argentina. But many years ago, that office every month on the 10th of the month would publish the USDA estimates of the agricultural situation in Argentina. And the Argentine government would immediately on the 13th of the month respond and say, USDA's numbers are all wrong. Here are our numbers. Well, one month we were having some computer difficulties. And so we published an alert that said, our apologies due to some computer difficulties will be on the 15th this month instead of the 10th. And the very next day, the government of Argentina said, well, due to some computer difficulties, our results are going to be delayed this month and we'll publish them on the 18th. So USDA's numbers are often seen as an objective source of information as to what's happening. We also have a system called GAIN. This is publicly available, no login required. You can go directly to our website and access this. And this is a wide variety of qualitative information about different countries and their agricultural systems, what they're growing, what they're not growing, what sorts of barriers and challenges they're having in agriculture. Now, that said, the Foreign Agricultural Service is a relatively small organization, and USDA's international presence, while robust, is not a huge number of people. So USDA as a whole organization is about 110,000 employees across mostly the United States. We have less than 300 employees outside of the United States. So you can do the math in your head there. Most of our work internationally is done through partnerships. I mentioned previously international organizations, through NGOs, through sometimes working with other agencies, and of course with many of the people just like you. So we do a lot of work with universities every year to get their technical expertise. Many of the times we'll take faculty who are, teaching classes during the semester and have those same faculty travel to other countries and teach on the same subjects in those countries for short-term workshops and seminars. We use our universities for activity implementation, instructional programming, and of course, we want to hire your students in the future. So I do want to highlight some funding opportunities that may exist depending on your level of interest, your topical expertise. I mentioned earlier the non-degree fellowships and exchanges. We fund technical assistance, transboundary animal diseases. Many of you have heard of the NIFA-AFRI program, which is much broader than you might think and which can be used for some international collaborations under certain circumstances. If you are employed in a minority-serving institution, there are special grants just for MSIs. Et cetera, et cetera. Some tips for funding success. This is probably, if you remember nothing else that I tell you, this is the most important slide for you on my presentation. Know your funder. Make sure when you're putting in your proposals that they are relevant to your funder. If you put in a proposal to USDA and talk about how you're going to lift people out of poverty, I can guarantee you USDA does not care, right? Tell USDA how you're going to improve food security. Tell USDA how you're going to improve agriculture moving across borders, right? Now, that said, that's USDA. Other organizations will have different priorities, so make sure you're emphasizing what's important to your funder. Also, know yourself. What are your skills? What aren't your skills? Where do you need to draw in collaborators? If you put in a proposal for something that you're not, that you have only mediocre skills at, you might not get selected for that proposal. So know what you have, know how much time you have, know what your LOE, know what your commitments are, know if you have institutional support or not. Ask for feedback, do a peer review before you submit, ask for the funding agency for comments, if you can, request score sheets. In USDA's case, we don't release score sheets, but we will provide comments if you ask for them and only if you ask for them. Do networking, make sure and don't wait, as I say, for the platter. Don't wait for someone to come knocking on your door with a funding opportunity. You have to seek them out, because I guarantee you that if you don't, someone else will. So, this is another quote to finish with. Everyone says the sky's the limit, but remember, we've been to the moon. That's just me being cutesy there. And that concludes my prepared remarks, and I will let my co-presenters go, and then we will take some questions.
Thank you very much, Jim Sweets. Thank you. We're going to move on to Dr. Wenda. And I see my co-moderator, Michael, is also joined us. Michael Olabisi. He is a co-moderator for today.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you, Michael, for the invitation. I'm really delighted to speak to all of you. And I see we have a very robust attendance this morning. So I'm very excited to start the conversation with you. And I'm also delighted to follow Jim, who, as the USDA, is a federal agency, and NSF is a federal agency as well. And he told you to know your funder. And so my presentation will help you know your funder, know the NSF a little bit better, and also give you a point of contact for when you do have an idea, you can reach out to me and float the idea by me, and I can help you figure out where it might be a good place for it. So next slide, please. So the National Science Foundation was, history begins in the 1950s when Congress said we need a national funding agency to support the development of science and technology, research and development in the United States. And so NSF is that funder. We do fund US-based institutions, and I'm going to clarify that in a little bit. But remembering we are a national organization, a national federal agency, that we do respond to Congress who wants to see US dollars stay in the United States. However, I will clarify that further, but just remember we cover, and next slide, please. So we have 8 funding directorates, and we cover all of the sciences, really except health-related sciences. We leave that to our sister agency, the National Institute of Health. So if you are doing biological research, computer information science and engineering, education and human resources, engineering, social, behavioral, and economic sciences, math and physical sciences, and geosciences, including polar sciences, please reach out and look to NSF for potential funding of your project. Next slide, please. So how do we do it? We do it through merit review, and we have 2 main criteria: intellectual merit, broader impacts. You can get more information on this on your website, but this is really crucial, and reflecting on what Jim said. You can see that our researchers who are funded at US-based institutions are working with colleagues around the world. And there's not a country there that's not touched, that NSF hasn't touched. And on the continent of Africa, we have over 500 projects in that time period that self-identified as involving some sort of activity on the continent of Africa, be it travel, collaboration, data collection, publications, or other activities. There may be projects that are doing things in Africa that did not self-identify when they submitted their proposal. So that is not included here. And so this is really important because of the 160 some people that are here today, I don't know all of your institutions. Some of you may be at US-based institutions and be able to apply directly as a principal investigator to NSF. Or if you are not at a US-based institution, then hopefully you know or have a collaborator who is, and then you can collaborate with them and engage in research activities that is NSF funded. Next slide, please. So where does NSF, where do you see the types of international activities or the funding of it? Typically, most of it occurs in our regular awards in core programs. So if you're a biological scientist, or if you're a geoscientist, or if you're an engineer, if you as a principal investigator based at a US institution develop a proposal collaborating with a colleague in Rwanda or Cote d'Ivoire or Botswana, you can put together a research project and submit it, and NSF will not pay salary to somebody outside of the US, but they will pay for research activities. Like if you have a workshop, or if you need to pay for a research assistant to help you collect data, or somebody who knows the local language. So there are research activities that NSF will pay for outside of the United States. Next slide, please. So in my office of OISE, we like to think of ourselves as promoting the development of a globally engaged science and engineering workforce, which is, from the first slide, remember, one of the missions of NSF. Increasing opportunities for US leadership in global science and engineering, which again reflects the NSF mission, as well as facilitating and supporting those beneficial relationships that are going to support global research opportunity and create great global science. Next slide, please. The Office of International Science and Engineering, as well as promoting partnerships, we also have 3 programs that you could collaborate with colleagues and apply to. So one is what we call the IRIS program, International Research Experiences for Students. And it's exactly what it says, that it is a mechanism for funding research experiences for students to travel to work with colleagues in another country. So IRIS is one program. And if one trick with NSF, if you know either the initials like IRIS, or if you know the NSF number 24506, if you just put that into Google, it'll take you instantly to the web page. Next slide, please. We also have one called ExcelNet, and it's building networks of networks. And so the goal of this is really to bring additional support. If, say, you have a very small network just between yourself, one other institution in the United States, and 2 universities in Africa, and you want to expand that, and you know of some other groups who are doing similar works, but you want to connect it. ExcelNet is a lovely opportunity tool for you to do that, to really launch an international research network of networks that will lead to an accelerated advancement in an area of science after the award period. Next slide, please. And the most recent, the newest program that the Office of International Science and Engineering has is what we call the NSF Global Centers, Youth-Inspired Research Addressing Global Challenges. In fiscal year 23, it was on climate change and clean energy. Fiscal year 24, it will be in the bioeconomy. The key to the global science, the NSF Global Centers program, is we are looking for research that is youth-inspired, that engages stakeholders beyond the academy to inform the youth-inspired research. It focuses on engaging diverse talents, workforce development. And please be watching our website for the news on the next Global Center program. And next slide, please. And very briefly, NSF also participates in other multilateral opportunities. If you're not aware of the Belmont Forum, I would encourage you to look for it. Just put Belmont Forum into the Google and you will find it. Next slide, please. For the social scientist in the group, please look up the Transatlantic Platform. This is another multilateral opportunity that NSF engages with and is a wonderful opportunity for collaborating with researchers around the world. Next slide, please. And there, I would like to thank you for your attention, and you can reach me at wbausch@nsf.gov. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Wenda, for the presentation. We are now going to move to our third presenter, Ms. Amira Nelson.
Hi, everybody. How are you? My name is Amira. I'm the Senior Outreach Officer for the Fulbright Specialist Program, and I'm based at World Learning, which is an international education and development nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. I'm so excited to join everyone today to talk about the Fulbright Specialist Program. But before I do that, if we go to the great, perfect, that slide, I'd like to just the U.S. Department of State with the mission of fostering mutual understanding between the people of U.S. and people of other countries around the world, advancing knowledge across communities, and generally improving lives around the world through that cross-collaboration and international exchange. And those may sound like very lofty goals, but how that really trickles down is that across the entire Fulbright program, different opportunities are provided for faculty, administrators, students, artists, and professionals to do a variety of different things, whether that is study, teach, conduct research, or engage in professional projects. If you want to learn more about the larger Fulbright program, I would encourage you to visit the website that I have listed there today. I'm going to be talking about the Fulbright Specialist Program specifically, and then my colleague Kate Van Emmerich from Institute of International Education will be going into details about some of the other programs. But if you can go to the next slide, I'll just give you a quick sense of the scope of the Fulbright program. Like I said, I'm going to be talking about the specialist program specifically, of which there are 425 specialists that go abroad each year from the US. But the Fulbright program actually offers more than 8,000 awards annually across many different programs. So it's really a matter of finding what is the right program, what is the right opportunity for you or for your collaborators. Next slide, please. Now, to provide some details specifically about the Fulbright Specialist Program, this is a component of the Fulbright program that was established in 2001, really for the purpose of providing really short and impactful opportunities for U.S. individuals who are established academics and professionals to engage with their counterparts overseas on a short-term project, and also to enable institutions outside of the US to deepen their collaboration with US academics and professionals, whether those are individuals that they may have already had some relationship with, or whether they're broadening their relationships with a range of US academics and professionals. And when I say short, these are really intended as anywhere from a minimum of 2 weeks to a maximum of 6 weeks in length. And all Fulbright Specialist projects are intended to be driven by the hosting institution. It's actually the host institution that determines the length of the project, the activities of the project, and the overall goals based on their institutional needs and objectives. And most of these projects take place all in a single visit, although some 2 or 3 visit projects can be proposed as long as they don't exceed 6 weeks. To give you some sense of the scope, at this point, there are more than 150 eligible countries that can host specialists, and we typically expect to have 400 to 425 of these projects each year. And this particular piece of the Fulbright program is administered by World Learning. Next slide, please. Now, what is it that Fulbright specialists are doing during these short projects? And if you're at an institution in another country, whether that's in Canada or on the continent, what can you propose that a Fulbright specialist do at your institution? Fulbright specialist projects are specifically focused on training, education, or other knowledge sharing or capacity building activities. I've listed out here some examples of the types of activities that we commonly see specialists doing. It's important because these are short projects, again, just 2 to 6 weeks, that institutions think about really kind of concrete activities that are reasonable for that amount of time. But you might notice that one of the things that I haven't listed here is research. And that's because the specialist program in particular is not designed to enable US individuals to go overseas to engage in research. Rather, again, they're focused really on training or education activities. That being said, having a Fulbright specialist exchange is a really great way to jumpstart or continue conversations about research collaboration into the future. It's not uncommon for specialists and their institutions to talk about funding opportunities like NSF that they can maybe collaborate on to submit a proposal on after the Fulbright specialist exchange is completed. Next slide, please. Now, specialists are really across the gamut. This program supports 24 different eligible disciplines. And even across these 24 disciplines, there are a number of topics and fields that might not explicitly be listed as a discipline, but they are supported by the program. So for example, for folks in the humanities or in the arts, those are not a separate discipline, but they're included within the American US Studies field. Next slide, please. And just briefly, here's a list of the eligible host institutions. Most of you, I believe, are at institutions of higher education. So you should be eligible if you're in another country to host a Fulbright specialist, but there are a range of other eligible institutions as well. Next slide. Now, I'm going to spend some time on the actual program structure because it is really an interesting and I think unique in some respects within the larger Fulbright program. In that, again, Fulbright specialist exchanges start with the hosting institution. It's overseas institutions that need to develop and submit a proposal to host a Fulbright specialist. And those proposal deadlines and processes are determined on a country-by-country basis. So I'll provide some information later on about how to get started on that if you are at an overseas institution. Here in the US, individuals who want to serve as specialists need to apply for admission to what we call the Fulbright Specialist Roster. And there is a peer review process for admission to the Fulbright Specialist Roster. If that individual is admitted, they receive a 3-year tenure on the Fulbright Specialist Roster, and that's the period of time with some waiting periods between projects that they can be matched with a project and with the host institution and ultimately serve as a specialist. And there are 2 ways that a potential specialist and an institution can match. One is what's called an open project. Institutions can choose to just submit a project proposal and receive assistance from the program to identify a specialist. And the main way that we do that is by sharing those open project proposals after approval by the local embassy or Fulbright Commission with everybody on the Fulbright Specialist Roster and conducting a really robust recruitment to identify possible candidates for the host institution's review. The other way of matching a specialist in an institution, which may be more of interest to this particular audience, is nomination by the host institution. We call this a named project. In this case, an institution, for example, if you've hosted a fellow before, a Carnegie African Diaspora fellow before, and you wanted to bring them back to your institution to work on another project or expand on your prior collaboration, you would submit a project proposal and nominate that specific individual. If that project is selected and that individual is eligible, they've gained admission to the roster and they meet all the other eligibility criteria, then we will directly finalize that match with the nominated specialist. And I've listed some key eligibility criteria for those of you in the audience who may be considering applying to the specialist program. I read somewhere the human mind can read much faster than I can speak aloud, so I'm going to go ahead and proceed to the next slide. Now, the funding structure for this program is bilateral in nature. Traditionally, a portion of the funding comes from the U.S. Department of State. The transit costs, airfare, and honorarium that goes directly to the specialist of $200 per day, as well as visa fees and health benefits. And traditionally, institutions provide either in-kind support, like an existing lodging facility, if your institution has a hotel, a hospitality school, a hotel, or faculty housing where you can lodge them, as well as meals and in-country transportation. But that being said, the Department of State does recognize that cost sharing like this can be an impediment to institutions. Many institutions may be under the impression that they have to definitely be able to provide all of these costs in order to be competitive in the proposal process. But the Department of State, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, is really looking to increase its engagement with this program. So really, I think any amount of cost share that institutions can provide is a great start for this program. So I just want to emphasize that. Last slide, I believe. So as far as next steps for aspiring specialists and host institutions, if you are in the audience and you are looking to become a Fulbright specialist, I really encourage you to visit our website. We'll actually be hosting a more in-depth information session for U.S. applicants tomorrow. And if you register for that, you can get access to the recorded session. If you're an institution, I encourage you to visit your local U.S. Embassy's website or to get in contact with them directly for more information about that application process. If you are based in Canada, you should contact the Canadian Fulbright Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amira, for sharing an interesting perspective. We're going to invite Kate Van Emmerich, to give us her pointers and advice.
Thank you, Esther. And Randy, do you mind if I share my slides instead of having you do it?
Sure, you should be able to share your screen.
I think I've got it. Does that look good to everyone?
Yep.
Great. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Kate Van Emmerich, and I am the Assistant Director of the Fulbright Student and Scholar Programs in Sub-Saharan Africa at the Institute of International Education. So my presentation is a follow-on to what my colleague Amira just presented. I will be sharing information today on the Fulbright Student and Scholar Programs, which are open to students, faculty, artists, researchers, and professionals, both from the US and Africa. Okay, so my colleague Amira graciously provided you an overview of the Fulbright program, so I'm going to dig into some more specific information about the Fulbright programs that are administered by IIE. So the Fulbright programs in Sub-Saharan Africa are funded in large part by the Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. They are managed on the ground by U.S. embassies in each country that participates in the program. And IIE works in partnership with ECA and the U.S. embassies to administer the day-to-day programs across the continent. So all awards to and from Sub-Saharan Africa are country-specific, meaning each country gets to set their own criteria. But in general, a lot of the work passes through my office and my team. And then, of course, we collaborate very closely with my colleagues at ECA in Washington, D.C. So IIE administers what's called the 4 core Fulbright programs. So these are the oldest and the largest of the programs that fall under the Fulbright umbrella. Amira did a good job of pointing out it's a very large umbrella, as many of you I'm sure know. But today I'll focus on the U.S. Scholar, Visiting Scholar, U.S. Student, and Foreign Student programs. The Foreign Language Teaching Assistance Program technically falls under the Foreign Student Program umbrella, but it is different enough that I will talk about it a little bit more in depth later. So before I dive into the specifics of each program, I did want to share a little bit about why Fulbright is overall such a good opportunity for both people from the US and abroad, besides the obvious that it is a funding mechanism for research and study. At the core of Fulbright is intercultural exchange, and the opportunities that Fulbright provides for people from around the world to meet and connect are truly transformational. Fulbright relationships span continents and decades, and Fulbright alumni gain access to large networks around the world that further expand opportunities for research collaboration and publishing. We like to say, you know, Fulbright is a huge program, but there is generally something for everyone under the Fulbright umbrella. So don't be intimidated by the amount of information I'm about to share with you. Each US embassy has resources to help if you're interested in the programs. IIE and all the other cooperating agencies that work on the programs also offer support for people who are interested in applying. Okay, I will dive right in with the Fulbright US Scholar Program. This program offers approximately 400 awards. Awards is slightly different than grants. So 400 awards means 400 opportunities for candidates to apply in 135 countries for US citizens to teach, conduct research, or complete a professional project abroad. So narrowing that down to sub-Saharan Africa, which is our focus today, there are 30 countries on the continent that participate each year in the US Scholar Program. And let me caveat that by saying my region is sub-Saharan Africa, so there are additional countries in Northern Africa that also participate in the program. I don't work with them on a day-to-day basis, but there is information about those programs on the Scholar website. So most awards in sub-Saharan Africa are open to scholars in any discipline and are generally very flexible. So candidates can propose their own project with their own host institution. Each award is country specific, so candidates need to find the best match for their interests, expertise, career profile, and type of project being proposed. It is very important when considering this program to not only think about the benefit to the individual, to the scholar, but also the benefit of the proposed project to the host country and host institution. Again, Fulbright is about collaboration, it's about person-to-person exchange, and so we don't want to fund a project that benefits just one person. We want to fund a project that benefits many people, a community, a country. Funding for the program provides living expenses, round-trip travel, relocation expenses, and accident and sickness insurance, and dependent tuition if you bring your school-age children with you. So the website where you can search for awards is listed at the bottom of the slide. IIE does have a robust outreach and recruitment team that can advise interested candidates on the best award and walk you through the application process. I will say the US Scholar Competition will launch in mid-February, so if you're interested in the program, now is a great time to go to the website and start learning more about the program. Very quickly, these are the eligibility requirements for the US program, the US Scholar Program. This program is for US citizens only at the time of, and they must be US citizens at the time of application. There are no exceptions, so green card holders, permanent residents are not eligible. Each award, like I said, is specific to the country. Some countries require you to have a PhD, other countries do not. Some countries have a requirement for professional experience, some countries do not. In general, most of the awards to sub-Saharan Africa do require a teaching component because, again, our goal is to have the scholar engage with the higher education system in their host country. And of course, if you held a Fulbright US Scholar Award previously, you must wait 2 years before you apply for another award. But you are eligible to apply for the U.S. Specialist Award, which Amira presented on earlier, without that waiting period. Okay, so the Fulbright Visiting Scholar Program is sort of the partner of the U.S. Scholar Program and offers approximately 1,000 awards in over 100 countries to foreign scholars to conduct postdoctoral research at U.S. institutions across the country. 20 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, on average, give or take every year, do offer visiting scholar awards. Again, each of these is country specific. So you'll have to look at the award offered for the country where you are from and sort of match your expertise and career profile. But in general, these awards are very flexible and open to scholars in all disciplines. And so you propose your own project with or without a named host institution in the United States. If you do not have a host institution in mind, IIE will work with you to identify a host institution and place you at that institution. There is also a smaller program that's part of the Visiting Scholar Program called Scholar in Residence. And this program offers opportunities for foreign scholars to lecture, work on curriculum development, and generally learn more about the administrative side of higher education in the United States. So the funding provided for the Visiting Scholar Program is for living expenses, round-trip travel to and from the U.S. We do offer enrichment activities for visiting scholars, and of course, accident and sickness insurance. Again, the link at the bottom of the page will provide you more information overall about the Visiting Scholar Program and the eligibility requirements, but you'll have to actually engage with your country's U.S. Embassy in order to learn more about their specific country competition. The public diplomacy section of each U.S. Embassy in Africa runs their Fulbright programming, and often they have a website and use social media. So I would encourage you to watch social media, visit the embassy's website to find out more information. Very quickly, here's the eligibility for the Visiting Scholar Program. You must hold citizenship from a country with an active Visiting Scholar Program. So again, not every country in sub-Saharan Africa participates in the program. In general, a PhD is required for this program, although we do offer some awards for professionals, especially lecturers who are interested in more curriculum development training. You must have enough English proficiency to carry out your proposed research project, and you cannot be a U.S. citizen or U.S. permanent resident. Okay, so into the student programs. The Fulbright U.S. student program offers approximately 2,200 grants to 140 countries for U.S. citizens to undertake graduate study, conduct research, or teach English abroad. Narrowing that down again to sub-Saharan Africa, 26 countries in Africa participate in this program each year. They offer opportunities for U.S. students, and that term student is actually quite broad in its definition, to conduct research in all disciplines or to teach English as a teaching assistant at the high school or college university level. Again, each U.S. student award is country specific, and so interested candidates need to research the best match for their degree level. Some awards in Africa require you to have a master's at the time of application. Most only require a bachelor's degree. The length of grant, the length of time that someone can go abroad. Foreign language skills, it's important, obviously, for some countries. If you want to do research there, you have to be able to speak the language. And then, of course, their proposed project and affiliation. So again, it's really important for candidates interested in the U.S. student program to not only think about what's relevant and important for them personally, but also how the project that they are proposing is relevant to the host community and the host country. The U.S. student program does have a community engagement angle to it, and so candidates are required to talk about how they plan to engage in their host community and what activities they will do beyond their proposed research to engage and share about the U.S. culture and learn about the culture of their host country. Funding for the U.S. student program covers living expenses, round-trip travel, and accident and sickness insurance. So the US student website is at the bottom of this page. I encourage you to go take a look or share it out with your students. The competition for the US student program will open in about a month or a month and a half.
So Kate, we are running a little behind schedule.
Of course.
That you wrap up if that's okay.
Sure, of course. Thank you, Esther. I know, too much to talk about. Very quickly, eligibility for US student program. I do want to cover the foreign student program very quickly. This is the largest of the programs that Fulbright offers in sub-Saharan Africa. 39 countries participate. This is for graduate study or graduate level research in the United States. And so if you have a student with a bachelor's degree who wants to get a master's in the US or wants to do their PhD in the US or wants to do some doctoral research in the US, this would be the program for them. Awards are opening across the continent now, so I encourage you to share with your students, or if you yourselves are interested, to take a look at the website at the bottom of the page. The funding for this program covers tuition, university fees, living expenses, travel, enrichment activities, and insurance. Very quickly, anyone with citizenship from a country that participates is eligible and must have English proficiency. This is the FLTA program for anyone who wants to teach their native language in the United States at a US institution. There are 5 countries in sub-Saharan Africa that participate in this program. I can share this slide out later. And then I do want to quickly highlight there are a number of other what we think of as smaller, even though they're not necessarily actually smaller, programs under the Fulbright and ECA funding umbrella. Most importantly is the Humphrey Fellowship Program, which is the opportunity for leadership training across international professionals, and even more countries in sub-Saharan Africa participate in this program than they do in the foreign student program. It's short-term leadership development. It's an incredible program. And then, of course, we have the Young African Leadership Initiative called YALI, which is the United States' signature effort to invest in the next generation of African leaders. So both of these are amazing programs that obviously I don't have time to talk about now. But for leadership development, these would be the programs that you want to check out. And then last slide, again, the Fulbrightprogram.org website if you want to learn more about any of the programs that we talked about today, as well as the Fulbright social media. Thank you, Esther.
Thank you, Kate. So reminding our participants, we're going to have an interactive Q&A session at the very end. So if there's anything that Kate has covered and you want her or any other speaker who has gone before has covered something, I know there are some questions in the Q&A. We're encouraging you to post your questions there. We'll make sure they get answered. Welcome, Peter. Our next speaker is actually 2 people from DAD, Peter and Gudrun. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Actually, Gudrun is going to take the lead here.
Yeah. Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting us. Presenting DAD funding opportunities. My name is Gudrun Chazot. I'm from DAD in Bonn, and I'm happy doing this presentation together with Peter. So hello, Peter. So let's start. Like we don't have so much time. Let's start a bit with the DAD. Perhaps some of you don't know it. So what is the DAD? We are the world's largest funding organization for international exchange. We are an independent organization. Our members are universities and student bodies, but our budget is coming mainly from the German government. So I didn't put in here our budget, but it's more than 700 million euros per year. So it's it's really a big budget we have. So we're an experienced intermediary between higher education systems and the worldwide network. We have offices all over the world. And we are the German institution for the Erasmus funding for Europe. So we are really covering a big range of opportunities and of scientific cooperation, let's say. Next slide, please. So I would like to share with you our strategy 25. So we promote excellence and broaden perspectives of education and science through international exchange. This strategic area is covering mainly the focus on individuals. So individual funding, opportunities for graduates, for students, for scientists. The next pillar is enhance international collaboration for the benefit of science, industry, and society. So this is more referring to our activities on international cooperation. So institutional cooperation opportunities for universities, working together with universities worldwide, and as well for research institutions. And the third is assume global responsibility and contribute to development and peace. In fact, not many of you might know that DED is thought of a think tank as well. We have a wide range of expertise on higher education worldwide, and we serve the government, the German government, and as well other stakeholders in Germany and worldwide with information about the situation of higher education systems, etc., all over the world. And we are using our network, our great network, for getting all the information on this. Next slide, please. So here, just a short, we try to put it short. We have so many things to see, so please take looks at our website. We can't cover everything, but we try our best. So we have two headquarters in Germany, of course, in Bonn, where I'm located, and we have another one in Berlin, nearer to the government, of course. So 57 DED offices worldwide, regional offices, we have 19, and 38 information centers. We have our German centers for research and innovation, and what is quite useful, and we have a couple of them, our lectureships, for example, in sub-Saharan Africa as well. We have more than 20 lectureships and long-term lectures and German study teachers. Next slide, please. And now I'm going up to Peter.
Yes, so we're going to be toggling back and forth, Gudrun and I, across the Atlantic. So I am based in one of our regional offices. My name is Peter Kerrigan. I'm Deputy Director of DED's regional office in the US and Canada. So I'm here in New York City, and also responsible for marketing and outreach in both countries. And so I'm going to talk a bit about some of the resources that are out there for all of you in terms of exploring any ideas you may have about either researching in Germany or studying in Germany. I should say that we have funding at all levels, from undergraduate through and including senior researcher and faculties, all nationalities and all disciplines. So it's really quite inclusive in that respect. Just a couple of websites here, and no need to write them down because you will receive the presentations later, but highlight a few. This one is, we have two websites, Study in Germany and Research in Germany, Study in Germany here. We also have a website. We, since, as Gudrun pointed out, officially represent all of German higher education. We can't tell you which universities make more sense in terms of what's stronger for you, but we can point out to you different resources that will help you find the right fit in terms of what you've done, what you're studying and or researching, and what you hope to accomplish at that institution. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So there are two really, I think, core websites that if you're going to write anything down, I would say Study in Germany and Research in Germany. And as the names imply, they really cater to whatever you're hoping to do, whether it be to study in Germany and or research in Germany. And both of them contain valuable information, not just in terms of what research institutions or study programs, et cetera, out there, but of course, all funding across the board, not just from DAD, from our partner organizations, the German Research Foundation, for example, Alexander von Humboldt Foundation, et cetera. So they can really help you. What is the cost of living in Stuttgart versus Berlin? I want to bring a partner or spouse. I want to bring a child. What does that entail? How do I find a postdoc? I'm a senior faculty member. I just want to do short-term research. How do I find a research group, et cetera, et cetera? So the websites listed on these slides will be very, very useful in helping you get started. And as Gudrun pointed out, we have offices around the world. So wherever you are, chances are there is either a DED lecturer and or an office nearby who can help you even further. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to spend too much time on why Germany, because Gudrun and I could talk for hours on that. But I just want to point out a couple of things first on this slide and then the next one. For those of you who are interested in pursuing another degree in Germany, or maybe you are advising students who might be interested or researchers, there are a number of things to point out about the higher education landscape in Germany, not just the quality, but certainly for those of you coming from educational institutions where the fees are quite high to study. Germany is really a very cost-effective, high quality option, a viable option in terms of pursuing another degree. Also to point out, I think, is that people don't realize how diverse the academic landscape is. Over 12% of the matriculated student body does not have a German passport. And there are over 2,000 degree programs offered in the English language. Next slide, please. So similarly, I'll sort of reduce the marketing campaign here for the research landscape as well. But for those of you who are involved in research, not just STEM, but other fields, I think most of you are familiar with the reputation, and the rightfully so, the reputation of Germany as a leader in science technology, but really there's also money behind it. There's a lot of funding out there, whether it be for short-term research, for longer-term research, establishing research groups, research collaboration exchanges, etc. And Gudrun and I will try to very quickly go or touch upon a few of those opportunities to whet your appetite shortly. Next slide, please. So next slide, please. I'm going to just very briefly touch upon the opportunities for those of you who are based in the US or Canada, meaning that you're either in a degree program here or you're on faculty here working at a university in the US or Canada, or that you are advising students who fall into that. Or I might add, if you're not located physically in these two countries, but have your last degree achieved from a university, it's very complicated, a degree from a US or Canadian university, your last degree that you received, you're eligible to apply for funding through us. And a lot of what I'm talking about, Gudrun's going to talk about as well. So I'll keep it very brief because she'll really bring it down to the level of those of you and talk about those of you who are indeed based in Africa. So very briefly, one of our flagship programs is funding available to pursue a master's degree at a university in Germany. And this is for all disciplines, etc. The stipend covers cost of living, transportation, as well as insurance. You apply for the first year of study, and then if it's a 2-year degree, you reapply in the second year, and most likely you'll get the funding extended. So if you could go to the next, keeping in mind, of course, that most universities in Germany charge minimal, if no tuition at all. So any of the funding that we're talking about is really to defray the cost of living and any ancillary costs that you may encounter. Gudrun will talk about this as well, but this is a very, I think, healthy list of research opportunities for you, regardless of where you're based, in terms of short-term, long-term, everything from master's students, PhD students, postdocs, and of course, senior faculty and researchers. So there's funding available at all levels and all disciplines, and information is available on our various websites. And keep in mind the deadlines, because sometimes the deadlines change. There are usually 2 deadlines per year. Sometimes there are 3 as well. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about a program for those of you who are based in the US, Canada, Ireland, or the UK, expanding the outreach here a bit. And this is for whether for yourself, depending upon if you qualify, or for any students you may advise. And these are master's or PhD students in STEM fields who are funded to go and do a research internship at a German company. So it's industry-based research for up to 6 months, starting in the summer in the Northern Hemisphere. So have a look. If you Google, if you're based in one of those countries, have students who are matriculated in those countries, have a look, and that would be a fantastic opportunity to gain international experience very early on in one's career. Next slide, please. And we have a plethora of funding resources for exchanges at all levels, and that is faculty exchanges, short-term lectureships, whether or not you want, wherever you're based, to bring in undergraduate, graduate, and PhD students or postdocs. There are a number of programs for that. Again, depending on where you're based, there's funding available for you to bring groups of students to Germany. And of course, there's funding, last but not least, for lecture series, if that's something you're interested in pursuing. And again, I'm really just throwing a lot of ideas out there, but we encourage you to go on the website below. The slide is the website for the worldwide website, dad.de. The website for those of you in the US and Canada is dad.org. Next slide, please. And Gudrun, I'll pass over to you.
Coming to me, yes, just for, yeah, thank you. For explaining the logic, we have different funding programs for different regions, let's say. Some are the same, and in some countries it's different. So here we have the in-country and in-region scholarship program that we don't have in the US, for example. So here we have a scholarship program for masters and PhD students who can get a scholarship for doing a full master or a PhD in their home country or in other countries in the region. It's with specialized universities. We select the universities first, and then these universities, they can offer scholarships to African graduates for doing the research or the study program in their university. You can find the information in the at the web page in country. In region, we have 25 institutions nearly, and we have them all over Africa. So West and Central Africa, East Africa, Southern Africa, everywhere we have these institutions, and we try really to cover all the regions. This is a really very, very good program, and I've seen we have an alumnus in the panel in here with us, because here it's really easy, feasible for people who have family restrictions, who can't come to Germany, for example. So we are quite proud, and this is another element of helping or sustaining structures in our partner countries in Africa. So we are quite happy with this program. Next slide, please. Yeah, here you have the code. I don't know the word in English, to be honest. This sign here, this photo. You can pick it up.
QR code, Gudrun.
QR code. Oh, like in German. Thank you. The QR code. So just pick it up, and then you will be right away at this page, and you will all get this presentation. So don't fear. And here you can see, well, there you can find all the information, the stipend, how much is it, etc., etc. So just giving more information. And one additional point, what I like a lot on this program as well, you have the element, you have the short-term research stay in Germany that you can apply for if you have the stipend. This is great because you have this second element as well. You can come to Germany if you wish for doing so. And we have the summer schools in Germany. So it's really, and the training programs giving additional competencies on presentation skills, for example, or how to write a proposal, all these things that are so important for researchers as well. So it's a good program, and it's worth taking a look at it. Next slide, please. Now we are coming to the programs where people come to Germany. We have a low number of master's programs. Really, we don't have so many. The first one is Leadership for Africa. It's a program that is for selected countries only, and it's focusing on giving opportunities for refugees. So really a special program, and it's only open for a couple of countries. So next year it will be open, for example, for Uganda, Kenya, for Chad mainly. For some, it's just always a small round of small number of countries. What we have since a long time already is EPOS. It's a development-related postgraduate courses. So here we have specialized universities or master courses in Germany that are chosen by DAAD, and they offer their programs for people in countries, in development countries. And this is a program of high quality, really an amazing program as well, running very well. So worth it as well, taking a look at it. And we have the Helmut Schmidt program as well, running since a long time, dealing with public policy and good governance. Next slide, please. What is mainly for Sub-Saharan Africa at DAAD for the opportunities for coming to Germany? Mainly is for PhD. Here we have what is different to the other office Peter mentioned. We have a full PhD funding possible. So you can come really to Germany for 48 months, 4 years for doing a full PhD. This is different. And as well, the graduate school program is as well for a full PhD. And additionally to this, we have all what Peter mentioned already, what he has on his slides as well, the short and long-term research stays, etc. So a whole range of opportunities for coming to Germany for doing research in Germany. And we have a re-invitation program for the alumni as well. Next slide, please.
So Peter and Gudram, you're
Yeah.
actually out of time, so I'm going to
Yes.
request you to wrap up because
Yeah. Okay, so I will really be quick. Here, the benefits, you can take a look at it when you are deciding doing an application. Next slide. Next slide here as well. It's just for giving you more information, but like we will send the presentation out, you will find it. I put here in just one moment. It's a program for people that are staff of universities. If you are working at a university in Africa, we have specialized programs, training programs for staff of universities. So take a look at the DS program. We have a program for chancellors, for example, for dean's training program, for example, really high quality training programs. We have our HKA initiative, which is dealing with quality assurance. Next slide. And I just wanted to mention that we have this project funding line. You can see the link. This is German universities apply for the cooperation, but it's always on eye level. It's projects all together, the German university with the university abroad. So just take a look at it and ask your contact partner if they are interested in doing an application together. Next slide. I think we're at the end, but next slide. Peter, please rush.
No, next slide, please. Just suffice to say is know your funder. What's important to your funder? Great questions that were Venda and Jim posed, I think is true for us. Why Germany? Why this funding? Why this program? And then the last two slides were just our contact information. So with that, I will say thank you to all of you and for your patience and for including DAD in today's session.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Peter and Gudram. That's a lot of information and we appreciate you rushing through it. Sam, please go ahead.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Oti, Senior Program Specialist with Canada's International Development Research Center. So I'm here to talk about IDRC. Like I said, I'm with our Global Health Program. Next slide. Yeah, so what is IDRC? We are essentially a crown corporation, which for many of you in Africa could translate as a parastatal of the government of Canada. Though we are to a large degree quite autonomous. We were established by an act of parliament in 1970, so we've been in existence for over 50 years. And our primary mandate is to fund research that is led by the Global South and in the Global South and for the Global South. As you can see from the map, we have several offices across the world. We have our head office in Ottawa in Canada. We have regional offices, which you can see, excuse me. I am based in our Nairobi office, which covers our East and Southern Africa region. Next slide. So, like I said, you could consider us a parastatal, but the correct term is a crown corporation, a Canadian crown corporation, governed by a board, annual budget of over 200 million Canadian dollars, which comes from the Parliament as part of Canada's official international development assistance. But we also get significant funding, co-funding from other donors, such as the ones that are listed. Next slide. So we have a strategic plan, which we launched in 2021 to cover the period 2020 to 2030. And it's important that the length of this strategy is important because it's the first time in our history that we're having a 10-year strategy. We've tended to have 5-year strategies. And this is critical because it means, I think it sort of underlies our recognition that change takes time, impact takes time. And so to fund research that will lead to impact, we need to stay the course, right? And so this sort of underlies that long-term thinking. Next slide. So I'll take a little bit of time here, and I beg your indulgence. So these are the 5 programming areas that we fund and that we support. I'll talk about I'll talk about each of them very quickly, in no particular order. We have an education and science program, so that's sort of 2 programs in one. The education arm, a bit, so is really looking at innovations to improve access to and quality of education, particularly for girls and marginalized groups. And one of our flagship programs here is a $100 million partnership with a global partnership for education, which we are calling KICS, or Knowledge for Innovations. And that's the KICS partnership, Knowledge for Innovation. So this is something that is available on our website. And if you're in the education sector, it would be great to take a look at. On the science bit, we're really looking at strengthening the science and the research ecosystem, building the capacity of science and innovation systems, as well as stakeholders within the system to use locally driven research to inform national and regional priorities. One of our flagship initiatives within this program is what we call the Science Granting Councils Initiative. And in that initiative, we are supporting national science granting councils across Africa to be able to do their job better of grant making, of regulating the research ecosystem. We also have a partnership with Swedish SIDA, where we are investing in artificial intelligence for development, another big initiative, and this is all about strengthening the technology and innovation ecosystem. So that is for our education and science program. We also have a democratic and inclusive governance program that is focusing on investing in research and innovation that will enable people in the developing world to enjoy the so-called dividends of democracy and inclusive governance. And within this program, we're looking at supporting research on legal empowerment of especially women and other equity-seeking groups. We're looking at innovations around digital inclusion. We are looking at addressing the burden of forced displacement. The next program is on sustainable inclusive economies, and that's really looking at building the evidence base that will foster shared prosperity and expand economic opportunities for women and young people in the developing world. One of our flagship initiatives is what we're calling the Scaling Care for Innovations initiative, and this is in partnership with Global Affairs Canada, and it's about responding to the challenges and gaps in unpaid care, which, as we all know, women have a disproportionate burden of, right? And so we're looking at innovations around ensuring that women get recognized, and and we reduce and redistribute the burden of unfair burden of care work that women bear. The fourth program is the Climate Resilient Food Systems. I spent part of my time in this program, roughly 10%. And again, I think the name is obvious. We support research that will contribute to building resilience among communities that are severely affected by climate change, and to also address the health threats that arise from the unsustainable food system that the world has at the moment. One of our flagship initiatives under this program is the Climate Adaptation Research Program, which we're calling CLARE, a $100 million initiative, 5-year initiative with UK FCDO. And the goal of that initiative is to enable socially inclusive and sustainable action to build resilience to climate change for people across the global south. Lastly, the program where I spend 90+ of my time, which is Global Health, we are looking at supporting research that will strengthen health systems and policies so that they can deliver better maternal and child health, improve sexual and reproductive health and rights for women and girls, and more effective and equitable preparedness and response to epidemics and pandemics. And we have a number of initiatives. We have one on artificial intelligence for global health, where we are looking to strengthen what we call the advancement of responsible artificial intelligence solutions to SRHR and for epidemics. We have a program on One Health. We're calling it the Collaborative One Health Research into Epidemics Initiative, looking at generating local evidence on how best to implement One Health approaches to epidemic and pandemic prevention. And going forward, we're really looking at investing in climate change and health. So be on the lookout on our website that is going to be a major area of investment for us, that nexus of climate change and health, and supporting research in the global south around that. Next slide, please. So this is just a bit of the objectives of our strategic plan. I'll go through it quickly. Obviously, we're looking at investing in high quality research. Next slide. Obviously, it's not just about generating knowledge, so we don't believe in purely academic research. The research needs to have policy or practice influence, and so part of our objectives is to the strategic positioning of the research findings for relevance and for impact. Next slide. And in all the examples I gave under the different program areas, I mentioned a number of partners that we are working with, other funders. So we are really big on mobilizing alliances. Like I said, our CLARE program is in partnership with FCDO. Our AI for D program is in partnership with Swedish CEDA. Our Knowledge and Innovation Exchange, that was the X, I was forgetting what the X was for, is our partnership with GPE. Next slide. So what I think would be of significant interest to you is what are our funding modalities? So we do call for proposals, mostly competitive, mostly open. Sometimes we do closed calls under various circumstances. Other times we do commission work. We hardly do unsolicited funding, but we do some commission work where we commission scoping studies or regional consultations. And in fact, now that I have your attention, we have commissioned scoping studies and regional consultations on climate change and health research. So I hope that we can count on some of you to provide input into those consultations when they happen in the next couple of months. We have a research awards program. This is really targeting master's level students. We give them you could think of it as a one-year internship at IDRC. They get, I think, around 15,000 Canadian dollars to do their own independent research, and they spend part of their time supporting our operational and programming activities. We cover open access fees, but it's only for current grantees, and that's within 2 years after your project ends, recognizing that it's very difficult to publish often within the 2-3 year duration of a project. Next slide.
Mr. Oti, I'll request you to summarize the rest of your presentation.
This I think is the last slide. So again, some of the things we look at in our funding, if you apply through a proposal, of course, our mandate is Global South. So we need to see proposals that have strong Southern leadership, GEI, gender equality and inclusion. We believe in open access and in research ethics. Next slide. Okay. I'm sorry. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'm going to request my panelists to please start responding to the questions which are in the Q&A. We are running a little behind schedule and we might not get to all of them. So I'll request you to take a minute and just respond to some of the questions that have been posted in the Q&A. Sylvia, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Schneider Kwekwankuma. I don't know if you can see my screen.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, all right. So my name is Schneider Kwekwankuma. Here at the Association of African Universities. I'm the Monitoring and Evaluation Analyst on the World Bank Africa Center of Excellence for Development Impact Project. I'm stepping in for Dr. Sylvia Mkamdabire, who was supposed to be here.
Sorry to interrupt you. Do you mind putting your slides in a presentation mode so that it's bigger? Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Is it okay now?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. So I'm stepping in for Dr. Sylvia Mkamdabire, who is the Senior Project Manager for the Africa Center of Excellence for Development Impact Project. So thank you to my co-panelists who came before us. I see that they've presented a lot on the funding opportunities. The Association of African Universities is not a conventional funder, as you may put it, but then we present something different. And what we present is the gateway to Africa. We connect you to Africa. Essentially, we are the door to Africa in terms of whatever you are doing within the higher education space. And we're able to do this because of who we are, our membership spread, and then our offices that are spread around the world in Europe, Africa, North America, and then Latin America, and also our continental mandates that we hold from the African Union Commission. We also do most of these things, and they are informed by our vision and mission, and then the strategic priority areas that we operate. Today, I'm not speaking essentially on AAU, but I'm speaking on one of our flagship projects here in the Association of African Universities. As you can see, we have a lot of program areas that we are working on. We've linked all these projects. So if you want more information on these projects, once you get your hands on the PPT, you can visit any of them and get more information. But today I'm speaking on the Africa Center of Excellence for Development Impact Project. Introduce this project to you so that also connect you to the enormous opportunities within this project. So the ACE project is a special project, let me say, one of the World Bank's first higher education, regional higher education projects in Africa. You may also say one of the biggest World Bank's investment in higher education in Africa, and one of the most successful World Bank projects in Africa. And this is facilitated by Association of African Universities. So the project essentially is aiming at improving higher education and training and applied research at the postgraduate level in key priority areas in the sciences, agriculture, health, and then the other related fields. This program is special, unlike other projects that we normally have on the continent. This is disbursement linked. So essentially, all centers that have been supported with millions would have to engage in an activity and then produce results. This results is verified by the Association of African Universities, and then we issue disbursement letters, which leads for the World Bank to pay to the centers of excellence. So it's a unique project that we have on the continent. And then essentially the overall goal here is to advance cutting-edge research and then improving contribution to knowledge base in Africa. And so the specific objectives we have here is to deepen partnership among the ACs and collaborators across the continent, and also create interlinked specialized research centers across ACE institutions in Africa. So let me take you through a timeline of the project. The project started in 2014 when the World Bank committed $165 million to creating 22 centers of excellence in Africa. So they were competitively selected and supported with $165 million in total budget to start this whole project. Due to the success of this project, it was expanded to East and Southern Africa. The first part of the project, which was the East One, covered only Central and then Western Africa. So based on the successes, it was extended to Eastern Africa and Southern Africa with an additional $148 million to support 24 new centers of excellence. This project ended somewhere in 2019, and in 2020, based on all the successes experienced in the ACE-1 project, the World Bank committed an additional $274 million to the project. The Agence de Français de Développement, AFD, also committed an additional $72 million to the project, and so it was expanded to cover 53 centers of excellence across 11 West African countries, and this time Djibouti was included. And then there is also World Bank committed $70 million towards only agriculture based centers, and with this 6 additional centers were selected in Malawi and in Mozambique. Now we present to you a map of all the areas where the project is, you can find all our projects. So essentially, it's spread across we have 70 centers across 50 universities, across 20 countries in Africa. Essentially, they are in all fields. So if you go to all these countries, you will find centers of excellence operating in agriculture, ICT, oil fields. So the opportunities here are enormous. And then if you look in my next slide, which is also based on the sectors that we operate, we have 20 health centers, 16 agri centers, 8 energy centers, 6 education centers. We have 4 centers in mining, and then 9 centers in ICT centers. So this is where we present opportunities for collaborations. So whichever area that you are working in, whatever research you are doing, and if you want to expand to Africa, this is an opportunity for you to connect to AAU so that we can link you to all these centers operating in all these fields so that you can commission your research works with them. So let me give a bit of figures on the project. So we have, in terms of master's enrollments, we have about 8,231 masters enrolled in the project, 2,828 students in PhD programs, and together the centers have generated $75 million in external revenue. So these are funds that were raised by the centers on their own, aside the support from the World Bank. It shows the success of this particular project and how it makes these centers self-sustainable. So I think in my next slide, I'm just introducing you to some scholarly opportunities within the ACE Impact project and beyond. So what we essentially calling for is research collaborations with our African Centers of Excellence. So if you go through, you can select whichever area you are working, you select a center of excellence, and then you can push to collaborate on in terms of research. There's a special indicator for research collaboration. So all the centers are welcoming these collaborations. There are also consultancy roles here at the Association of African Universities on the project and beyond. So periodically, we do call out for experts in specialized fields to support our centers of excellence in transfer of knowledge and sharing of knowledge. So please be on the lookout for these calls. Once we put it out, you can apply, and then we can put you on the list of experts to support or exchange knowledge with our centers of excellence. And also there are scholarship opportunities within these centers of excellence in masters and PhD, and also postdoc. So you can visit, once you start researching into our centers of excellence, you can visit their websites and their social media handles, and also through AAU social media handles. We do introduce some of these scholarship opportunities and postdoc opportunities that are available within some of these centers of excellence. So we invite you to visit AAU's website for more information on what AAU is doing. You can also follow the ACE Impact website through what I've shown here. You can also reach us on Facebook, on our X platform, on these particular handles here, and on LinkedIn, Association of African Universities, and we are willing to connect you to our centers of excellence. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to very swiftly move to the last presentation. Please hang in there with us. We realize it's a lot of information, but you'll agree with me that it's very valuable information. Mr. Daniel Platch, the National Academy of Science Perspective.
Thank you, Esther. I will make this quick just to keep with time, but my name is Daniel Platch. I'm a program officer at the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. And this afternoon, I'm going to quickly talk about our US-Africa Frontiers of Science, Engineering, and Medicine program. Like Schneider, this is a bit different and definitely more specific than some of our previous presentations, but it's a great opportunity. So let's dive in. Next slide. Before I really get started, we do have good brand recognition in the US, but as the US National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, we are 3 separate academies founded in about 150 years ago to provide independent and objective advice to the government. We are not the government, we are independent, but we work very closely with them to make sure that data is involved in any decision-making for the benefit of society. We do this through consensus studies, reports. We are also a membership organization where our members are pretty much the leaders in their field. It is a career distinction and a great honor. I work on none of this, so please don't ask about it. I work in the Policy and Global Affairs Division that really works to build international collaborations amongst STEM professionals and connect them with US researchers for the betterment of mankind, for lack of a better term. Next slide, please. And this is where the US-Africa Frontiers of Science comes in, Frontiers of Science, Engineering, and Medicine comes in. It is a relatively new program, only 2 years old. We started with colleagues in Nairobi in 2022, but it is based on a methodology established over decades with the Frontiers of Engineering and Kavli Frontiers of Science. But essentially, we run a series of meetings that bring 100 emerging early mid-career researchers, we categorize that as within 15 years of their PhD, together to truly approach and address critical issues facing Africa and the US today in a truly interdisciplinary way. Everyone says interdisciplinary, but this is a fundamental pillar of our program. There are 5 plenary sessions. Everyone who attends falls under one of these sessions and attends all of the sessions. One example I'd like to use is from a different program, the Arab American Frontiers. But we had a panel of petroleum engineers on stage. We're the US, we like oil, lots of other people do as well. But they were talking about drilling and issues that they had in drilling in hazardous environments. And during the Q&A, an attendee raised their hand and said, "Hey, I'm a dentist. I do a lot of drilling myself. Have you considered this?" And that's an extreme example, but it highlights the kind of dialogue we are trying to push with our programming. Everyone exists in these silos, as our USDA colleague mentioned, and approaches issues from a very similar mindset. So we try to fundamentally break down those silos and build those collaborations for convergence and interdisciplinary research. It is a very participant-driven program. We have a technical committee of early career researchers. Each plenary session is co-chaired by an expert from the US as well as from one on the African continent. And they tell us, what are the most pressing issues in your field? Where are the frontiers? What's the cutting edge dialogue that's going on? Why is this relevant to people outside their field? And what do they really need to know? And then they choose speakers to speak to those points. We also provide opportunities for professional development and follow-up support. So I will get to those. But before I do, next slide. I just want to, we actually just wrapped up one of our meetings in partnership with the Hassan II Academy of Science and Technology in Rabat, Morocco. As you can see, they're very disparate session topics, but just from a cursory glance, you can see that there is a lot of overlap between them and a lot of areas where, say, sensing technologies can be applied to vaccine manufacturing. So extremely interdisciplinary. Next slide, please. And then funding and support. Again, we're very specific on our program. We are truly looking for emerging leaders. So the barrier to entry is very high, but not financially. We fully fund any attendees, recognizing that there's a lot of countries and a lot of institutions that don't necessarily have the financial support, but they have amazing researchers. They have amazing scientists, engineers, and so we want to get them to our event. So we cover all of that. We also take the next step of, you know, when you're at these meetings, it's great, you talk to wonderful people, but what next? And so our solution to this is these short-term travel grants, so we call them fellowships, to get people into each other's labs almost within a month after the symposium. They're competitively awarded to attendees, but we fund this to get that, take that initial conversation and make it a reality in each other's labs and visit those institutions. And then we are, again, not the government, we're soft money organizations, but we feed our attendees into numerous programs and people who really, we'll call them generous with their funds and their support for science and engineering projects. We have a number of webinars before our events even take place, where we have our sponsors and partners present all of their programs. So people who come to our events already have an idea of what programs are out there, what funding opportunities and what the priorities are for these funders. And then the funders also give presentations at the event. So in the second one, this past week, we had USAID, Gates, DOD, Google, CMU Kigali, Afrotech. We had numerous funders there who not only present, but are there, we ask them to stay the entire time. So those side conversations are absolutely critical to building those relationships and understanding what they want and what you are presenting and how you can align your priorities. This is an old photo, but we do seek very high caliber people for this. Deji Akawande, obviously it's old, it's with Obama, but he received numerous support from a number of these organizations listed. And I can say from our first symposium, I actually just received an email the other day from one of our sponsors saying, we funded a few $1 million worth of research projects from amongst this meeting. So with that, I rushed through this quite quickly, but my next slide, please. My email is there if you have any questions or if this sounds of interest to you. You can also email our public box where the whole team has access to it, and you might get a response. I'm pretty responsive, but that way you'll definitely get a response quickly. If you are interested, we're probably going to launch the next call for applications in about 6 to 8 months. So if you want to be added to our mailing list to apply and attend, please shoot us an email. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Daniel. So we are actually out of time, but then there are a couple of questions that I feel are important and need to be addressed. I mean, all the questions are important, but I realize that many of the participants there are many participants who are asking questions about disciplinary diversity. There's an impression that a lot of the funding that is available is for STEM disciplines and the quantitative disciplines. And I would like to invite a couple of the panelists to share their perspectives on the opportunities which are available for people who are from the arts, the humanities, social sciences, and somebody even asked mental health. Is there enough breadth in terms of the different disciplines that are needed to empower, to strengthen the research ecosystem? Wenda, I hope you wouldn't mind. Oh, Gudram, you have a first volunteer. Please go ahead.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that the opportunities of DAD are not only for STEM or whatever. It's open for all subjects, so this is included. And with our in-country, in-region program, we give funding to the universities as well, to universities that offer PhD training. So this is for research, because doing a PhD is doing a research work. So it's funding research in itself in Africa as well. We have had a special program called Climate Africa, where really we had funding for doing research for postdocs, but this has ended, unfortunately. But within the in-country, in-region program, this is a component as well. So I wanted just to highlight this.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Gudram. I'd invited Wenda because I know that the NSF has an interest in all the disciplines. Wenda, please share your perspective.
Yes, and I'm very happy to. And in the Q&A answer box, I did put 2 web links. One is just to the Social, Behavioral, and Economics Directorate at NSF. The other is to a specific social science multilateral opportunity that I mentioned in my talk. But the other answer I'd like to give is, historically, when you look at funding of the hard sciences versus the soft sciences, there always has been a stronger prevalence for hard sciences, just when you look at the data. However, the really good and exciting news is that more and more, especially on multilateral opportunities, people are looking for interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and people are recognizing we can't do this work without the social sciences and humanities. And so if you are a social scientist working in these fields, please look carefully at these opportunities, because they are finding the impact is much higher when you have social scientists and humanities involved in the research. The research is richer, and it responds to the needs of the community. So there are opportunities out there, even if when you look superficially, it doesn't appear so. So persist, please. And I'm a social scientist, and I promise you there are opportunities out there.
Thank you. And Peter, you had your hand up. We'd like to hear from you.
Thank you. I was just going to throw the answer in the chat, but I'll do it quickly now. I think also look at, to add on to what Gudrun said, our partner organizations, the German Research Foundation, the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation, Max Planck, there are a number of the Helmholtz Society. If you go on the Research in Germany website, you'll see that every discipline is represented, and particularly those in the humanities. So there's funding across all levels, particularly if you want to work bilaterally with Germany. So that's all I had to say on the topic. So sorry if we focus too much on STEM, but that's not the complete picture.
Right, thank you. Anybody else wants to chime in? And you can answer any other question that was in the Q&A. We've been given permission to go over by 10 minutes. So we have time to answer 2 questions. Any of the panelists, is there anything you want to chime in, you want to respond to during the live discussion based on the interactions you've had with people in the Q&A? Daniel or Jim, anybody?
Yeah, so I'll just chime in very quickly and note regards, and I have to run a clock to another meeting now, but I will note. So I personally am a political scientist by training. So I mean, we have plenty of social science disciplines within the Department of Agriculture. You know, one of the things that there's always things that are of interest and relevance. You know, questions of policy, questions of interaction. Food has a very significant social angle, obviously. So, you know, those are all going to be on an opportunity by opportunity basis. And so, you know, by all means, leverage tools like, you know, the grants.gov platform, which announces our opportunities, use keywords, you know, use those things. But, you know, it goes back to the point that I made about networking and knowing your funders. You know, reach out to your funders, because if they know you're out there, then they can remember that you're there. They can send you a note that says, hey, we just posted this opportunity. Hope you saw it, you know, those sorts of things. So with that, I have to duck out, but thank you all for having me. Thank you. Jeremy.
Thank you, Jim.
Yes, thank you so much, Esther, for moderating. And I've been following, speaking with the panelists on the side, and asked them to drop their contact details into the chat right away if they can. And we'll also curate all this information and share it out with the attendees. But I think there was a really important question that I think many of you can respond to, that I think we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss it briefly. And that is the accommodations your organizations are making right now for the lack or difficulty it can be securing sabbaticals. So are you know, how are you working with faculty members who may not be able to take extended leave from their institutions to uptake your programming? Are there any, you know, special considerations that you have? You know, it's a different higher ed landscape than it was, you know, 5 years ago, let alone 50 years ago, where this was a more widely available option. So I think some of the attendees would like to hear a little bit more about accommodations for individuals who cannot take sabbatical within your programming.
Jeremy, I can jump in. For the Fulbright U.S. Scholar Program, we do understand that it can be very difficult for faculty at U.S. institutions to take an extended leave of absence. And to answer that, we have created some what we call flex awards, which means that you can go for multiple trips to a host country for 1, 2, or 3 months at a time, and that is spread out over a 2-year period. So that's one solution that we've come up with. We're also encouraging countries in sub-Saharan Africa to consider awards of 5 or 6 months instead of the traditional 10 months, knowing that maybe a semester is easier to take off for U.S. faculty. For the inbound programs, the shortest length of time for visiting scholar grant is 4 months. Again, sort of like matching a semester. And we do offer some short-term opportunities for visiting student researchers as well. So we are aware of the challenges, and the Fulbright program is constantly trying to meet those and stay, you know, within the mission of the program.
Anybody?
I guess I'm sorry. Please,
Yeah, go ahead,
Esther.
Peter.
I was going to jump in, and it's very similar to what Kate has said, that for, at least for our funding and some of our partner organizations, we recognize that. And so there is short-term funding available for shorter-term research projects. And there's also funding available for shorter-term lectureships and faculty exchanges. So while it may not, you know, the professor can't be released in terms of a semester or a year, there are opportunities for that professor then to conduct research and or do a lecture abroad.
All right, thank you. So we'll probably have time for just one more quick comment, and then we're going to have to transition to the next session. So I'm going to ask Amira to make a brief comment, and then right after you, I'll request my co-moderator, Michael Olabisi, to steer us for the rest of the discussions in the next panel. Welcome, Amira.
Sure, I'll just chime in for the specialist program. You know, as a 2 to 6 week long program, we generally see that being a little bit less of a struggle for our participants here in the US, but certainly, you know, 6 weeks can be a lift as well. I will just emphasize we don't have any restrictions around when Fulbright specialist projects can happen. So it's quite popular for faculty to kind of lodge that over a break or at the end of the semester when they can maybe just take some time away for a few weeks and then continue on when they have some free time. So we're fairly flexible in that respect.
Thank you, Amira. And thank you to all the panelists and the participants. And I apologize we couldn't get to each of you, but we really do need to transition to the next session. We have some other panelists who are waiting to discuss their experiences with getting funding. And I'll hand over to Michael Olabisi. Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Esther, for an excellent job moderating a very interesting session. And thank you also to our panelists, panel of funders. It's really excellent, all the opportunities. Actually, I'm clapping for you. It's excellent, the information you packaged so compactly, and we know there's more for this, and the links that you gave us so we can share that with others. So at this point, I'm going to invite our panel, our second panel for the day, to kind of prepare and be ready to share. But before we do that, I'm also recognize that we've all been sitting basically pretty much nonstop for the last 2.5 hours. So I'm going to ask for like a 25-second, everybody, if you can, just stand up and stretch just so you kind of get some of your circulation moving. Guess I'll do the same. Well, move around, get some mobility. Just so we can feel good about ourselves. Thank you, Jeremy. You can see some good movement on the screen here. Yeah, this is good. It's good to stay healthy and get the blood moving. All right. So for our audience, we're extremely excited that we are not just sharing with you information about how to build research ecosystems through connections with funding sources, but we're going to share with you people who actually have done this, who are alumni, who can tell you what they did, what the challenges were, and their particular approaches to addressing the challenges or taking advantage of opportunities. We have I'm trying to connect to the run of show. The people who are going to present, and our first presenter here, thank you for that slide, is Professor Lawrence Mugisha from Makerere University, Uganda. Professor Lawrence Mugisha, please just go ahead. Professor Mugisha, are you there?
Hello, yes, I'm there.
All right.
Again, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Please try to keep it to less than 10 minutes if possible, just so. Go ahead.
All right. I want to, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity to be a part of this event. And since yesterday and today, I've been listening in very well. It has been a very wonderful discussion. Thank you so much, all the organizers, the panelists, and the participants for the big interest. Myself, as I'm Lawrence Mugisha, I'm a veterinarian, more so a wildlife veterinarian. I work with Makerere University College of Veterinary Medicine, Animal Resources, and Biosecurity. And as today they were presenting, one, I have hosted I've hosted the fellow twice back in Uganda with other colleagues, but I've also been hosted under the Fulbright exchange program by the same host back in US. So it has been a two-way. That is to start with. That is a very excellent program in that once you provide an opportunity for a fellow, a colleague, it could end up in other opportunities that promote all the institutions from both sides, but also promote capacity building and research. So for me, in my experience as hosting a fellow, as they mentioned yesterday, the most important thing has been planning and communication. I recall very well, we discussed this kind of arrangement when I had traveled to US for a symposium workshop for 2 days. And we discussed what can we do together to help the colleague in diaspora contribute to back to the country, but also what can we do in order to promote research. And definitely Carnegie provided the first opportunity, and we feel we applied and we got the offer. We performed very well. We got a follow-up support and hosted. And through that, we promoted one of our research that actually has gone ahead to attract more funding. But importantly, what I wanted to share is that we focus so much on capacity building for graduate students. And we conducted several different trainings, both physical and online, because some time fell during the into the COVID time. So we are able to do both physical and virtual. And to my best opportunity to share with you is that right now as I speak, I have 3 PhD students now in US, because we are able to share with them opportunities, how to go around such opportunities. And because of that, now we have 3 PhDs from our program in US. I have 1 more PhD students in UK. And then back home at Makerere University, I have quite a number of students that are doing masters because of the exposure of the trainings we conducted under the support of Carnegie. And of course, with Fulbright support, I also went to USA and spent there for 4 months, promoting more research, and we wrote a couple of different proposals. Some of them have not been successful, but we also have had some successes. So to me, especially today, I'm very, very excited to once again listen more to the different funding institutions. They have shared us with a lot of information. I know for most of the big grants, they don't allow researchers from African countries to be the PIs. I have a few opportunities, I know, but still, even when it is PIs from North America working with people from the South, it is still a very, very great opportunity for us to share information. By the way, I also need to mention that I'm the alumni of DAD from my master's, PhD, and short-term programs. So I've seen the importance of having information and using the information. So I've benefited from all those programs, and because of that, I ended up having big networks both in Europe, in America, and others. I'm trying to explore into IDRC in Canada. So that's the kind of, I wanted to share this kind of experience that for my fellow colleagues in African and other developing countries, that if we look out for these opportunities and we get networks and we form networks, we form groups, then it can yield into something very, very important back into our institutions. Importantly, we need mechanisms from our side to ensure that once we get this information, we see these opportunities, we are able to share. But not only sharing, but also creating opportunities to educate, because I remember when I returned from Fulbright, I shared with about 3 different colleagues and directly, and all of them applied and were successful. So to me, this kind of exposure, but also sharing, is what I've learned. And more specifically for this event, it is such a unique event that has brought people from different fields with different experience, and this kind of sharing that is happening here, I commend it, and I thank CADE African Diaspora for this kind of initiative. I think that's what we needed, and we had missed it for a while. My apologies, I was a little bit driving, so I wish to end here and then allow my other fellows to colleagues to submit. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Mugisha. Now we'll go on to Professor Margaret Kaitsa from Mississippi State University. Professor Margaret, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Dr. Olabisi. I have some slides. Thank you. My name is Margaret Kaitsa. I'm a professor in the College of Veterinary Medicine at Mississippi State University. I was a Carnegie Fellow twice, once as a cohort of 3 at Makerere University, and then that was the inaugural one. And then in 2017, also with a colleague, Professor Florence Wakoko from Columbus State University, we went to Sokoine University in Tanzania. I'm also a beneficiary of Fulbright from last year at University of Nairobi. So I was going to share how we learned about other funding opportunities that we got after the Carnegie experience, the resources that we used for looking for these opportunities, how we applied for them, why we think our applications were successful, and then advice for other Carnegie fellows wanting to find other funding. Those were the guidelines for our presentations. So I'll quickly run through those. I must say too that the initial funding that we had before the Carnegie one was a USAID funded project, which was big and regional in East Africa. And out of that program, we was born as East Africa, which stands for Higher Education Resource Services for East Africa, an NGO that is registered in Uganda, but is regional for all the the 7 East African community countries, plus Ethiopia. And the goal of that NGO is to advance women in leadership, in career development, and in management, wherever they are. So the first Carnegie experience, especially when we went to Sokoine University, was to register the HAS office at Sokoine University as the country office for Tanzania. We also have Mekelle University as the country office for Ethiopia. And we are still looking for country offices in the other 5 East African community countries. We are working on that. So HAS has been very successful. And I thank Dr. Jim Sweets from USDA Foreign Agri Service, who was our first presenter today. He covered the USDA FAS, and also we had a presentation from IDRS, International Development Research Center, that is from Canada. So, and also the one slide that Dr. Jim Sweet says was a takeaway slide. I took notes of that, 6 of them. And I can say that for IDRC, for us to get that funding, we partnered. Networking was number 5 on his slide. Don't wait for the funder to come to you. We went to FAWE, the Forum for African Women Educationalists, which is a continental-wide organization supporting women education, girls' education. So we went to them. We went to ASA, which is the Australian Council for Educational Research, and we partnered and wanted to scale up to SEME, which is an innovation of FAWE, telling girls to speak out when they are not being treated well, especially sexual abuse, and when there's inequity in schools, let them speak up. And that's one we just got an award. We are in the process of processing the contract. So that's one of them. And the other one was the USDA Foreign Ag Service Scientific Exchange Program, again from Dr. Sweet's presentation. He highlighted about that program. So when you are looking for funding for research, don't look for one labeled research. These scientific exchanges, some of them are for research, some of them for other types of training, but ours is for research. And this is a partnership with the African Union as they are forming the Africa Free Continental Free Trade Area, harmonizing the rules and regulations across all the 8 regional economic communities. So we had researchers, we hosted researchers in the US and at Mississippi State, 11 of them representing those 8 recs. And they partnered with researchers at Mississippi State University to develop research agendas, which they've gone back to their country to implement. And this is to support the science behind the SPS that we heard from Dr. Jim Sweets, that there has to be science behind what we do, behind food safety. So that's a program that's ongoing. We are just going to have a reciprocal visit now of the US-based scientists going to the continent. We are going to have a workshop in May so that we can engage with the stakeholders on the continent, the AU REX and the AUC in May. The third funding that we've received is Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and this is in partnership with Makerere University, School of Public Health, the Gender Mainstreaming Directorate, again with HERS East Africa, looking at gender equality in the East African universities, 35 of them in the 7 East African community countries. So we just completed a planning scoping review. We have the results. We are now using that to go and submit another larger grant, hopefully, for interventions. Now that we've heard from the women and the people we interviewed, and the results of the scoping study, we are now going to use it for applying for a larger grant. Again, the fourth one is also USDA Foreign Ag Service. Again, two small grants, 40,000 and 60,000. So don't shy away from those small ones. You don't have to go for the big ones first. And through that funding, go visit with the funders this was a project in Sokoine, with Sokoine, looking at strengthening agricultural production and regional trade among smallholder women in East Africa. We stopped over in Nairobi and visited with the staff, and we stayed in touch. And the following year, they sent a new program that was being started and said, "Can you take a look at this? Are you interested in applying? We can help you find partners." So exactly what you were hearing in the presentation, it actually does happen. So this is the funding so far that we've gotten. Next slide, please. So how did we learn about this? I've been sharing about networking. Networking is very, very important. Also at Mississippi State University, every week we do get a summary of calls. You can also register with the government. You can also register with the federal agencies directly, but we do receive a summary every week of the proposals. And also with Makerere University, they did a review of the gender status at the university, because they are government funded, and now there's a requirement that the budgets have to be engendered. So they did a review, and based on the results of the review was the project at Bill and Melinda Gates that I mentioned. So we partnered with the School of Public Health. The person who led the review is the one now applying for grants to effect the interventions to address the challenges that were highlighted. We also, at HERS, it's a 10-year-old NGO I mentioned, and they've been using mainly volunteers. They didn't have money for staff. And one of the volunteers is just looking for grants and sharing those and summarizing and seeing if we can apply. So that's another way we have been learning about those grants. I would like to mention at this point also, there's another NGO specifically, which has put together a database of grants. It's called Scientific Research. I didn't list them here, but they have been very helpful. If you want grants for whatever kind of grants, you can just search their database, and then they connect the grantors to the researchers, and they've been wanting to branch into sub-Saharan Africa. So that's another one that I missed listing here, but that is Scientific Research. And the resources is just collaboration when applying for the opportunities. We also have an international institute office which supports faculty who are applying for international programs. So I got support from that office and also from the various agencies that we collaborated with. I was talking to a colleague of mine from another larger university. Mississippi State is a land-grant universities, but there are also that's also another opportunity. Some grants, they will specifically mention that they will, especially from USDA. And I was talking to another colleague of mine. He mentioned that they were given $50,000 US to go to a hotel and seclude there and write. So we don't have those kinds of resources, but sometimes you don't know. It may be a dinner for late night writing workshops. We received that to help us write the proposals, be together and put in the proposals, especially when the timeline is very short. Can we go to the next slide, please? How we applied, I just mentioned the land grant opportunity, the strengths of the team, know yourselves, put together a team that can convince the reviewers that you can deliver and make sure that the proposal is strong. We were told about peer review. Most of us don't usually have time to finish the grant in time to get a peer review, but if you can, do that. And then also make sure you highlight your past performance, how you have delivered. And for colleagues, diversify your applications. I already mentioned that. Apply for those scientific exchange programs. They have research embedded. It could be graduate training programs. The graduate students are going to do research. They are the ones who do most of the research anyway. So go after those. Collaborate, reach out to successful people that you know or organizations. Build relationships. And they take time, visit wherever possible, and do your part. So I wanted to start with the assignment first, and then move on to the next slide. We are going to now move relatively quickly so that I can finish in time. Just wanted to highlight the magnitude of this program, which I was so privileged to be a part of. When we applied, I had no idea that this was a big project which is going to have such an impact, which when it is accomplished is really going to lift so many people out of poverty and to break down barriers between countries on the continent. Some of you may have been hearing some countries that have already announced that they have now opened up borders, no visas required. We want to facilitate mobility of people and goods across the continent. So this is a game changer. If you can, I'm just going to run through the project. Those were the 8 regional, the AU RECs listed there. So the fellows I hosted represented all those 8 from 8 countries. We had 2 from Nigeria, 2 from Zambia, 2 from Uganda, and 1 each from Rwanda, the Gambia, Tunisia, Mozambique, and Botswana. Can we move to the next slide, please? Just run through. I have just some pictures and summaries. So if you Google sanitary and phytosanitary policy framework for Africa, which the AU Commission developed between 2019 and 2024, so it's due for update. That's the policy framework under which this project is to accelerate that Africa Free Continental Trade Area, which has already been formed, and the secretariat is based in Ghana, in Accra, Ghana. Next, please. That's online. So that's the goal of the project, to create synergies by bringing the fellows over here to learn about how we do it here in the US, and then they can go back, and especially generating science, evidence-based, so that when they attend these standard setting meetings, they have data. So the project was to formulate that roadmap and to develop those research agendas, which they are now implementing back home. Next slide, please. That was the approach we were using, just bringing those technical experts. They were in 3 tiers, from the AU Commission, from the regional economic communities, and then another set that they were the researchers who came to Mississippi State to go back and conduct research, but also represented from the 8 regs. Next, please. That's the area, because we are looking at SPS, food safety, animal health, plant health, and the general policy management. Next, please. So I mentioned about the workshop on the continent. That's going to be the week of May 13, most likely in Nairobi, Kenya. And we are going to have stakeholders from the continent come to engage. Next is a set of pictures of the fellows. They are at the USDA Foreign Ag Service with Dr. Whitley Daniel, who is the administrator for USDA Foreign Ag Service, right there in the middle by the US flag. And then those are the fellows who came and spent 10 weeks, 12 weeks in total in the US, including attending the World Food Prize in Des Moines, Iowa. Next, please, just pictures, please. The same fellows still in Washington, DC. Next, please. And the fellows are at Mississippi State with the President Mark Kinham, who is also very attuned to globalization, to food security, global food security, and very supportive of international programs. Next, please. So that's my last slide, showing the fellows engaging. And can we have the acknowledgement slide? Important. With that, I would like to acknowledge Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship Program for the support, and Carnegie IIE, my host institution, Mississippi State, and the 2 African host institutions I visited, Makerere University and Sokoine University of Agriculture in Tanzania. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof. Kaisa. We're really, really low on time, so Professor Otieno, you can go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to present today, and I do have some slides. I am a professor of biological sciences at Oakwood University in Huntsville, Alabama. And next slide, please. So I have been privileged to be on 2 assignments through the Carnegie Diaspora Fellowship. My first assignment was in 2018 at the Adventist University of Africa in Nairobi. And that is when the Carnegie Fellowship was hosted at USIU. And I happened to visit USIU to visit the personnel there, and got my first invitation to USIU to present on critical thinking. And that opened ways for me to actually get a partnership for the second Carnegie assignment, which was multiple institutions between the US International University in Africa and the University of Eastern Africa, Baraton. So the second assignment was 2. Now I'm going to talk about all these things together because I see the interconnectedness of everything. And so I like to run through my slides with that theme in mind, just so you can see what's going on. I'll also like to point out that after my first assignment, there was the convening in Atlanta, Georgia, where I first met Jeremy and the crew from the Carnegie Diaspora Fellowship Foundation. And they recommended, I asked them, what will I do to basically get a second assignment? They said, well, usually the multiple institutions are regarded very well, so that might be something you want to try. So I tried that and definitely it worked, which was a really good idea. Now, the thing is that I got the award to go there in 2019. And like all of you remember, that was during COVID. So I got the award, but then I was told we cannot travel. Now, the proposal I had made was to basically train faculty in delivering courses online. So my argument was, it's still virtual and we can do it, but at that time, we didn't have any policy framework of engagement to do that. So I was encouraged to actually continue working with my host institution while they figure things out. So eventually we went out in 2021, but something very important happened during that intervening time because we went on training faculty. We had faculty workshops in online pedagogy, quality management, and all those things. And it was during that time that the MasterCard Foundation call came through. Next slide, please. That call came in to USIU and right in the middle of COVID. And of course, when USIU was looking around for experts to put this response together to respond to a proposal to the MasterCard Foundation, I happened to be on campus. So we put a team together and basically developed the proposal, submitted it, and it became successful. That's the side story. The program comes under the MasterCard Foundation Young Africa Work Strategy, which was set up in 2018. The goal of this was to enable 30 million youth to get fulfilling and dignified employment by 2030. So in that chart, you will notice that initiative began in 2018. So up to 2023 now, we have reached up to 7 million, but the target is 30 million by 2030. So there is another 8 years or thereabout that a lot of work has to be done. And definitely it is a big initiative. The foundation is committed to it, and there are several MasterCard Foundation programs going on in the continent. I like to also acknowledge Professor Mugisha, who was in this panel, who I met through the MasterCard Foundation program. Next slide, please. So the big challenges in this project was that the foundation had several scholars that were distributed all over the continent attending schools. So when the schools closed down, the foundation took up the challenge of how do we continue getting these people educated without having to send them home. So the foundation partnered with the scholars, the MasterCard Foundation scholars, and the institutions in which they were attending in order to continue that. So they realized that there were several gaps. The first is that we did not have sufficient instructional design and online pedagogy capacity within the continent, and that there was also lack of content, just the course material to deliver to the students. And then, of course, there is the number 4 issue, which was connectivity and devices. So they brought all the stakeholders together to try and figure a way out of this, which led to the initiation of the MasterCard Foundation e-learning initiative. Next slide, please. So the objective of this project was to train faculty in 10 institutions across 8 countries in instructional design and online pedagogy. Create e-learning content to be distributed so that the students can access instructional material, most of it from open resources, and develop a quality assurance protocol within the partnership, and then develop a community of practice in which all these things can be sustainably maintained. Next slide, please. So this is the research, the ecosystem. We have Arizona State University, U.S. International University in Africa being in the center of the circle. Arizona State University was identified as the trainer, and U.S. International University in Africa was the network facilitator, while the MasterCard Foundation was the funding agency. This was surrounded by the 10 institutions that were spread throughout the continent. We do have one Earth University, which was in South America. And then we also have the American University in Beirut, Lebanon. So other than that, the rest of them were basically within the African continent. So over time, I was tasked with I call it a privilege to basically put a team together to train faculty in instructional design and online pedagogy. And so we picked a team to do that, and we basically rotated and picked champions from all through those institutions to continue that. In the meantime, we also developed partnerships which are on the outermost circle. And the Carnegie Diaspora program was privileged to actually, there were 3 of us, because I was able to also meet scholars who came as diaspora fellows in Kenya, and I quickly adapted them, and they were very, very helpful in the process. And we were able to partner with Quality Matters, which is a quality assurance agency around the world, especially for online programs, but just general curriculum development for all the way from elementary school to university. And then we have Media Valet, which is a content management company that handles material. And then we have the FET, Interactive Simulations Program, which is really good in developing content for labs, especially in the STEM areas, chemistry, physics, math, and biology. So that way we could develop a more comprehensive curriculum or a more comprehensive experience for online education. So this was basically the network. Next slide, please. And this is the team. We had a team from everywhere. I will not mention everybody, but we have Arizona State. We have Diaspora fellows, Henry Wambui and Jocelyn Chedan Nkogo, who are all diaspora from the Carnegie program, and all those from USIU, different universities across. We have Canada and basically everywhere in between. Next slide, please. So the program was that you start with 2-week training, and 2-week training, there's a master class, and after the master class, there's a several week, up to 9 months, which led to basically a graduate certificate and a master's program in instructional design or online pedagogy. Thank you. Let's move on. Next slide. So there were some milestones that have been acquired, and at this point, we had 74% out of 136 scholars who have been trained. Many of them got graduate certificate. There are mini grants, and just to the USIU University, there's more than $7 million that have come through this program, and developed centers of excellence among the 10 universities in the system. And there's a lot of institutional-based learning programs that have been identified, and each of those 10 universities now have a micro grant to internally face and develop their own internal capacity in online course development. Next slide.
Thank you, Prof. Otieno. I'm going to ask if it's possible for you to just go to your last slide at this point, because we are completely out of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, there's no secret about it. It is all networking, networking, networking. And I like to emphasize the point that collaboration is really the new competition. You only become competitive when you collaborate, because there is nothing you can accomplish that's significant by yourself. Thank you.
Thank you for the excellent program description, as well as the final words. I mean, I think that's worth remembering. Collaboration is the true source of strength. Thank you again, Professor Tieno. Now we'll invite our next presenter, Dr. Simon Mariwa. Please, again, let's try and keep to time.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Michael, and thanks to my previous presenters. I want to talk about my relationship with Carnegie Fellow and how it has developed into a huge network of researchers over a period of 6 years. And so I want to share my experience with you and see how we're able to do this. Let me indicate that I'm a health and development geographer at the University of Cape Coast at the Department of Geography and Regional Planning. I have research interest in environmental sanitation, health behaviors, livelihood sustainability, and community development. So these are generally areas that I do research. I bring on board some experience in grantmanship where I will share some of them with you. And so far, I have about more than 20 research grants, ranging from a minimum of 5,000 US dollars to about 2.5 million pounds, which yes, some of them are ongoing. So generally, a total research grant of about 6.5 million US dollars if you put all grants together. Mainly, my external funders are Wellcome Trust, Medical Research Council, the British Academy, all in UK, and then National Science Foundation recently, where with my fellow, CADFP fellow, we won a grant we're starting this year. World Health Organization, UNDP, and DAD. And let me indicate that in spite of some of these successes, we also have failed about 1,000 times in trying to access funds. So generally, as most of us know, it is just a number of factors that account for this. So we win some, we lose some, and we make progress. Let me take advantage to explain how I met my CADFP fellow, Professor Joseph Zume. He's a hydrologist, in fact, groundwater hydrologist at the Department of Geography and Earth Sciences, Shippensburg University of Pennsylvania, USA. He is originally from Nigeria, and he came to the Department of Geography and Rural Development at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Kumasi, somewhere in 2016, on a quadrennial grant, actually. And so as part of his visit, he decided to visit Cape Coast, to visit Cape Coast Castle and Elmina Castle, because he teaches some courses in African studies, and he thought that he had to have some experience of the castle, which he used as a resource in teaching the course. So a friend of mine at Kenya University linked him up to him and said that when he visits Cape Coast, he should contact me so that I can make arrangement for his visit so that he can be comfortable. So when we met in 2016, we saw that after the visit and all that, one conversation led to another, and realized that we shared some research interest, common research interest. He is a physical geographer with interest in groundwater, and I'm a human geographer with interest in environmental sanitation. So we're looking at how does on-site sanitation systems affect the groundwater quality. And so we decided to do some research together. And the first point to do was to apply for him to visit in the Department of Geography and Regional Planning as part of the Carnegie Fellowship. And so in 2016, in November, we applied for the visit to Carnegie, and we were successful when he visited in 2017 between May and June. And so he was here to assist us in the development of curriculum, design research interest, had some training with staff and students here, and then he supervised some students while he was here. And even when he left, he continued to provide some supervision support to us. And now let me indicate that such a relationship has developed into something as a research partner, and then you're more like a family now because of the little call that I received from a friend introducing Professor Zume to me, and then we're finding a common research interest and working together. So far, what has this fellowship brought to us? Professor Zume has visited the Department of Geography and Regional Planning of University of Cape Coast 2 times. So he came in 2017 on Carnegie Fellowship, and then in 2018, we had a second opportunity to win a grant from Carnegie to visit again. And so whilst in the second visit, we're able to have some materials, Carnegie has some support for those who are coming in, providing equipment and materials to conduct research and promote teaching and learning. And so we applied for that mini grant and we were successful. So with the kind courtesy of the visit and Carnegie, we have some basic equipment that we were using for water quality analysis, water quality testing, data collection, and all of that. That has been very useful to both the students and other faculty members of the Department of Geography and Regional Planning. In addition to these two Carnegie grants, last year, we also had the CADFP Alumni Mini Grant for conferences, where my fellow and myself, based on the research we are doing together on the impact of seawater intrusion on groundwater quality, we went to Beijing, China to attend the World Water Congress, where we made a presentation about our findings. Very interesting and great opportunity, courtesy of Carnegie. And then apart from working with Carnegie, we have also won 2 grants. The first grant we won together was from Shippensburg University. It's a small grant of $8,000 for us to continue working on the groundwater quality related to on-site sanitation and seawater intrusion. And so after completing that research, we published a paper out of that. And based on that initial proof of case study that we used the $8,000 where he visited and we collected data, did analysis, and we saw that there's potential, we decided to expand the scope. And so we had a second grant application from National Science Foundation, where our first attempt in 2022, we failed, but we went again and reapplied. And then in 2023, we were lucky to have an amount of $291,000 to implement a project from 2024 to 2026. And I think it came up, this is part of the IRIS program, where this is a track 1. So as part of the project, we bring in 5 college students from the US to work with college students from the University of Cape Coast and some high school students, so that we build their capacity in collecting scientific data, analyzing water quality and all that to whip their interest in conducting research in the area. So it is part of the relationship that we had. And this grant was done with some support from colleagues from the University of South Florida in the United States of America, where we have colleagues from there and the colleagues from Shippensburg University working with colleagues from University of Cape Coast to make sure that this program becomes successful. So it was just a 2-man affair between Professor Zume and myself, but now we have expanded it beyond that to University of South Florida. And even in University of Cape Coast, we have included the Department of Water and Sanitation. Professor Peter Obin is part of what we are doing for this 3-year period. And we know that based on this, a number of good things are supposed to come from it. What lessons have I learned from it in terms of getting grants and working with collaboration and ensuring that it's effective? I have 2 strategic things to talk about. One is strategic partnership or strategic alliance. We are in Africa where we have limited resources when it comes to research. So it is important that we identify colleagues who are in Europe, in America, or in diaspora. And then, because most of the grant or the funders will require that the PIs will come from their home institutions. And so if you're talking about Economic and Social Research Council, the Wellcome Trust, Medical Research Council, the British Academy, NSF, and most of the grants that we know about that offer big grants, they want the principal investigators to come from their home institutions. And for us here, the best we can do is to strategically align with such colleagues from such institutions to conduct the research here on our continent to ensure that we benefit, because benefiting means that it is not as individual benefit, but the country or the continent will benefit from resources that are coming from outside with the support of our colleagues in diaspora. So it is important we identify and align very well and have great partnership with colleagues who are in the diaspora. And doing so, know that we have to know what we want as an academic, as a researcher. What do you want? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are you bringing on board when you're making a contact with somebody? And so we need to have that strong partnership. And it's important that we stay connected and we make the first move if they need be, because no one is interested in you unless you become interested in that person. So that's one of the lessons I've learned over the period working with colleagues from different parts of the world, from Oxford to Durham University to Manchester University and all that. This is what I have learned. Then the second point I want to highlight is effective collaboration. Effective collaboration. We may start a collaboration, but how do you make it effective? It is important that we continue to work together, and you can only have effective collaboration when, as I indicated, you know your strengths and your weaknesses, and you are open about that. You have to demonstrate what you are bringing on the table. Of course, you're not going to seek assistance. You're going to seek partnership, and in seeking partnership, you should know what you are giving and what you are losing and what you want to bring onto the table. It is also important that effective collaboration requires investment in the relationship. I think it has come up. Networking, people talk about networking, but networking is very, very expensive to keep. It is very expensive to keep network. When they say expensive, not only financially, emotionally, technically, socially, you have to stay connected. And staying connected means that you have to invest in the process. And so investing in the process is stay connected, making sure that you share common interests and you discuss issues beyond academics. At a point in time, it becomes more like family working together to achieve a common goal. And so we need to work closely.
Thank you, Dr. Murray West. Sorry, I should not interrupt, but I need to let you know that we are really completely out of time.
All right, that's okay. So finally, what I want to say is that we have to get this done, we have to talk to people who have already won for a grant. So if you are applying to NSF or DAD or any organization, get somebody who has already done or won a grant from that institution and let the person support or review their work and give you insight as to how to go forward. This is a very, very important point to make when you want to win grants from bigger institutions across the world. Thank you very much, Michael.
And thanks again to Dr. Simon Mariwa. Now we invite your colleague, Professor Phil Okeke-Ejerika. Please, floor is yours. Dr. Phil, we don't see you. Can you hear us?
Can everybody see me or hear me now?
I can hear you. Yep.
I unmuted myself and also removed my video. So my video is on. I don't know if it's showing. Anyway, so I think we don't have a whole lot of time. So I am going to be I'll try to be very brief. My message is really more for those who are in North America, in terms of our own responsibilities to expanding the funding base for our colleagues who are in the developing in the continent. As you know, we have different kinds of research grants. We have the one that is strictly academic research group. We call them scholarly grants. They don't expect you to do a lot of the knowledge mobilization that has been identified. The focus really is on scholarly work, which moves into publication and stuff. And then there is the research grants that are more experiential and more of doing work, policy, etc., where you may have to go into the field, you may have to do some kind of training. And in that case, there could or may not be requirements for publication. I want to say that I speak as a diasporan scholar, a senior scholar, and an academic in a highly research-intensive university. The University of Alberta is one of the top 5 universities in Canada. I am a professor of gender and migration as well as development studies at this university. I run a multi-million-dollar research program that span 4 continents. I hire quite a few research coordinators and research managers. I do train a lot of junior scholars as well as students at various levels, master, PhD, undergraduates. They are usually within my my work. Many of them I fund. At any point in my work now, at any point in my research program, I do have anywhere from 8 to 15 research projects going on. Just to give an example, my latest project, the ones coming into my program, one is a $2.5 million research from the Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada. It would be considered the most prestigious grant you would get in the social sciences. It is also, of course, matched by a $1.4 million. It's a partnership grant, which means we have both university and community partners across Canada and beyond. I also have a new project, is called the Black Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. It is a research project aimed at enhancing Black entrepreneurship in Canada. It is they call it for the Central Hub. It is a $5 million research project. I also have a project that is basically designed for Africa. It's called the Queen Elizabeth Scholars Program. It brings junior scholars from West Africa to my university to work with senior scholars who will mentor them, help them to work with them to publish, and hopefully set up some kind of relationship which could span into things as long as even as much as sabbatical leave. That's the plan. So that's just to give you a few examples. What does Carnegie has to do with this? As somebody living in the Western world, I think the Carnegie has a very interesting effect on me. It woke me up. After my first fellowship, it has taken me to Nigeria, it has taken me to South Africa. But after that fellowship, after my, as I started to relate with Carnegie, I've always done my own research. I've collaborated with people. We've gotten, a lot of money and all of that. But Carnegie gave me a broader perspective. I think it resituated me. I got to see myself. You are a resource to Africa. You must find a way to amplify yourself as a resource. I began to think about how Carnegie increasingly began to expose me in terms of giving me access to African universities. I used to go there by myself to do work, but it's one thing to be sent by yourself, it's another thing to be sent by a reputable organization like Carnegie, to be able to speak with central administration and see what is happening. It also gave me access to potential collaborators. The situation we're facing in Africa. And the question becomes, if research is the business of generating knowledge to solve social problems, where do I fit in? Carnegie gave me a sense of purpose as well as a focus. I decided, I don't really think I know exactly what I was doing before. I decided that my research from now on will contribute to generating knowledge. It will train people, and it will mobilize that knowledge for something. And that is the 3 examples I gave you. Now, how do I find my grants? I will very quickly give advice from where I have moving on, because my idea is really not, is where did I move on from Carnegie? Where did it take me? I tell people begin small. You hear that somebody had a $5 million grant. You need to begin small pilot projects for yourself to learn the rudiments of doing research. Secondly, think interdisciplinarily. Nobody does things alone anymore. There are various interdisciplinary perspectives to what you do. I started life as an econometrist. Today, I am in a women and gender studies department. And I do research with people in the medical sciences, engineering, and so on. You have to consider the fact that these various disciplines contribute to whatever it is you're doing. A good example is the people who are doing heating systems in engineering. How did I come into that research? When I come in from a gender perspective, men and women feel heat in different ways. How do I get into an IDRC research on developing legumes? Well, it's one thing to develop legume, but how do you bring it to the table? Women bring the food to the table. If you don't figure out how that food can get to the table, the legume will sit there and basically die. I tell you, first of all, think interdisciplinarily. If you submit a proposal and it doesn't have those interdisciplinary perspectives, you are not going to make it. Secondly, I ask people, seek out meaningful collaborations. I say meaningful. Don't just walk in there because they are applying for a $5 million grant. You are building your research program. You don't want to look 10 years after and you're doing research all over the place. You want to gradually build it so that in 10 years' time, you are a specialist in 1 or 2 or 3 things. So seek out meaningful collaborations to enhance your work. When people say network and all of that, or find your donor, the funders, know what they want, you will find all of that in a collaboration. A lot of the people who are in those collaborations have applied and gotten those grants. You will find reviewers there. When you apply, you can find 6 senior scholars go through your work. You will also find people who will collaborate with you simply because they want you to develop your research program. So seek out collaborations. And this is where CADFP can be very helpful. There's a huge group of alumni that you can tap from. You can even use the alumni as well as that platform to do your research. People have done things like surveys and stuff, going through CADFP, who know AAU and all of that. These are huge resources that you can use. And at the end of the day, I tell people, when you apply for grants, remember the 3 things that they usually ask for. One is you need to be grounded in the field, which means before you're setting out, those small pilot work you are doing is what increases your publications, at the end of which you can prove to them that I know this field very well. The second thing is feasibility. Who is going to trust you with $2.5 million? Well, they will, if you can show that I've been in collaboration, we've done these things before, and the same people will join me in doing this one. And finally, I tell people, try and go for education, go for training, always go to workshops. I continue to do so myself on technical details on how to write grants, which ones to invest in, which ones not to invest in. Every grant for you. I think I will stop here and take questions. We don't have a whole lot of time. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for that very well-detailed presentation. And thanks to our audience for patiently working with us through all the great advice we're getting from people with experience connecting to funding. So I believe that's the last presentation we have, and now we encourage questions in the Q&A section. The first thing I'll start though before I dive into the questions is to remind you, in the chat, there's a QR code that we can use for continuing the conversation after the meeting. So please just go to the chat, scan the QR code and join the WhatsApp group. Second, if possible, type your question in the Q&A, and to our panelists, I encourage you, you can start to type your responses even before we do a verbal response, because it's possible that there's more questions than this time, given it's already past noon, and we don't want to get in between people and their lunch for those who are in the US, or between people and other activities that are scheduled. The floor is open for questions. Please type your questions in the chat window. We'll try and select and call them out from there. And thanks again to all the panelists for the excellent contributions. Okay, I think I'll just read out, because it's the first one I'm seeing here. There seems to be reservations in funding research that compares the built environment and health in the global north and global south. I guess maybe this is more of a tailored question, but if there's anyone who has experience in the built environment and health comparisons between the global north and south, Professor Babatunde Jayoba is seeking your connection in that regard. Other questions from the audience, please? And just so you know, I'm reading the Q&A, not the chat, so please let's have the questions in the Q&A.
So Professor Babatunde, this is Esther. I'm at Penn State University and I'm also moderating this session alongside Michael. I would say that's my background, built environment, and we're doing built environment and health related things. I'll put my email address in the chat and I can share with you some of the places that we've been going to for funding.
Professor Lydia Ziato, forgive me if I did not pronounce the emphasis. I think you should be able to unmute, but let's keep the questions really brief. Again, we are kind of time pressured.
Thank you. So very brief, I just want to say a shout out to Phil. I miss you. I want to see you again. So just a brief one. When you have a collaborator and, the African culture and the culture of the West is different. And there seems to be a cultural orientation clash. What do you do? I can go to any of the speakers. Thank you.
So if I were to, if I just my own 2 cents, if you can just, if when you talk about cultural thing, this is where collaborations are built. We don't just 3 people come together or 16 people come together and they do things. My own experience is that the ones that work well are the ones that are built. They go over time. People get to know one another very well. And a lot of the time, the focus is really on that social problem that we want to solve. If it's coming from the developing south, the global south, definitely, or Africa in particular, we give them the floor to define what it is that they want to do. At this level, as a senior scholar, I focus more on generating that funding to get work done. And it is important to me that those who know the problem well are the speakers. They are the ones who define the problem. So I would say that it will depend more on the people who are having the relationship. It's better built. It's not something to be taken in a hurry. And definitely people's cultural understandings must take priority. It must be put into consideration in this kind of work.
This is Margaret Heights. I wanted to contribute to that question about cultures, different cultures. My experience from managing a USAID grant that brought together twin universities from sub-Saharan Africa and universities in the US. We had 11 such grants, and we did have cultural issues, and the way we dealt with them was, number one, right from the outset, training. There was training for the US-based PIs who were going to work with these institutions from sub-Saharan Africa. The funding agency brought us all together, the PIs, and we had some trainings. Also, but from the we still, in spite of that, we still had cultural differences. But what helped was effective communication, clear, effective communication all the time. And we found out that in-person communication, even 1 week of meeting together face by face, helped a lot. It's expensive, but it helps. So that was a very, very important, mutual respect. And the communication, I'll go back to communication again, because initially the sources of mistrust were coming from not understanding that some of the policies we were effecting were agency policies that were being passed on through the institution to the from the to the US institutions, to the African institutions. So communication really helped clear that. So, and there was a study about the 11 partnerships that were successful, and some of the common threads across the reasons why they were successful. One of them was, I remember, was that these institutions had had a very long partnership. They had already developed respect and the trust with each other. So building that relationship is also a very important part of it. And effective communication is also a big one. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Professor Kaitsa. I do see one or two hands raised, but I also recognize that we advertised that we will finish this program at 12 o'clock. Our panelists, our panel of funders and our panel of fellows have all shared their contact information. So I believe the most effective and efficient thing for us to do is to just take the conversation online to WhatsApp and continue to contact one another and keep this thing going. It's really exciting what's been shared and accomplished today. I'm very positive that this is just the beginning, and we'll continue to not just talk some more, but also to execute and get things done and actually building robust research systems collaboratively with our partners, both here in North America, for those of us who are here, and in Africa with our partners and friends and colleagues and hosts over there. I think my colleague, Professor Dr. Esther Bonyo should speak or thank our panelists too before we wrap up, but this is us trying to close for the day, and thank you for participating.
Thank you so much, Dr. Michael Olabisi. Thank you. That was very interesting hearing the fellows' perspective, and it's complementary with what we had with the previous session where we had the funders. And on behalf of the entire steering committee, I want to express our heartfelt gratitude and appreciation to all the funders. You shared with us a lot of information. Even at a personal level, it's going to take a couple of weeks for me to process and digest it, but it's valuable information. It's the kind of information that I wish I had during my first year as an assistant professor trying to do research engaging African continent. And I'm sure the participants have benefited greatly from hearing these experiences. We also appreciate the fellows who've shared very openly all their secrets. And we know that it's not easy to get started, and we're very also appreciative that you're showing us where you've gone as far as the journey is concerned, but also reminding us that you started small. And that's something that we can all do. We can all take that first step and start looking for these grant opportunities, including the ones provided by the CADF program that are relatively small. But if you sustain the momentum and if you immerse yourself within this context of organizations and networks that are building research ecosystem, you can scale to the level of 2 million, 3 million, 5 million. Yeah, so thank you so much for hanging in there. We are a bit late, and we appreciate that the information that we're getting is valuable. That is why we still have 113 participants. Thank you, and we are looking forward to having you tomorrow. Michael, anything?
So that's on that note, we have even more exciting things we hope to discuss and talk about tomorrow. And if you have questions that you had today, we hope you'll show up again tomorrow and we can walk through them. We again appreciate the organizers and panel funders and fellows. And thank you, everyone. And we'll see you same address, same time tomorrow.